Chapter 2469. Violet Prison. The Tao that can be spoken is an extraordinary Tao. The name that can be spoken is an extraordinary name. The nameless is the beginning of the heavens and the earth. The named is the mother of all things. So it's often nothing to desire to observe its profundity. It's often there to desire to observe its profundity. These two come from the same source yet have different names, and they're both called profundities. Profundities within profundities, the door of profundities. The ethereal voice slowly reverberated by Zhuowen's ears. If you want to enter the door of profundities, then you must first escape your own shackles and prisons before you have the qualifications to possess it. Suddenly, a firm and low voice broke the ethereal voice, and then Zhuowen abruptly opened his eyes. What entered his eyes was a violet-colored world, and the surroundings of this violet-colored world were covered in dense violet-colored iron bars, causing this violet-colored world to seem like a violet-colored prison. Right above the violet-colored world floated a violet-colored revolving sphere, and the surface of this sphere was completely formed from violet-colored gas, causing it to look extremely strange. At the same time, Zhuowen noticed numerous figures that sat cross-legged within this violet-colored prison, and there were a few hundred of them with a rough glance. But these figures were all distributed in every corner of the prison, and they sat cross-legged without saying a word and not caring about each other. Moreover, Zhuowen noticed that all these figures actually contained the energy of Tao insight, and the lowest amongst them was first-level Tao insight, whereas he'd even seen a person that had comprehended 8th-level Tao insight. The Tao that can be spoken is an extraordinary Tao. The name that can be spoken is an extraordinary name. The nameless is the beginning of the heavens and the earth. The named is the mother of all things. So it's often nothing to desire to observe its profundity. It's often there to desire to observe its profundity. These two come from the same source, yet have different names, and they're both called profundities. Profundities within profundities, the door of profundities. The ethereal voice resounded out once more, and then Zhuowen noticed that the few hundred figures that sat cross-legged had opened their eyes successively. These eyes didn't contain the slightest emotion, and they were instead filled with a strange violet color. When Zhuowen saw these gazes, he knew that all of them had fallen into an illusion of Tao insight. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The hundreds of figures that were originally motionless all flew up into the sky. Then, under Zhuowen's astonished gaze, they actually began to kill each other. One figure after another fell from the sky. Zhuowen discovered that the figures that were killed did not really die. Instead, after they fell to the ground, the purple sphere in the sky shot out a purple light, and the dead figures began to revive. However, the will of the way of these resurrected figures had all been stripped away. Zhuowen looked up at the sky, and his eyes revealed a look of understanding. The Tao intent of those cultivators who became more and more courageous as they fought increased by a lot with every kill. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air blasted towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen coldly snorted and subconsciously wanted to take out the king's sword from his spirit ring, but found that his spirit ring could not be opened in this space. It was also this brief moment of surprise that revealed his fatal flaw. The figure that rushed over fiercely punched Zhuowen in the chest. Zhuowen groaned, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Fortunately, his physical body was extremely strong. Although this punch was terrifying, it was not fatal. Boom, boom, boom. The figure that attacked Zhuowen did not show any mercy. The moment Zhuowen retreated, he took a step forward and followed up with another attack. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He radiated his powerful divine sense, and found that his divine sense was actually completely suppressed. However, his divine sense was so strong that even though it was suppressed, it could still radiate a distance of several meters. With the help of his divine sense, Zhuowen easily dodged the attack. Then he suddenly clenched his fist, and the power of Tao insight gathered on his fist. He slammed his fist on the figure's head, smashing it directly. Thump! After the figure fell, Zhuowen found that a purple intent swept out from the figure's head and finally entered his body. The power of his Tao insight seemed to have increased a little. However, at the same time, Zhuowen also found that his consciousness began to be a little affected by this inexplicably increased power of Tao insight. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. He knew that this inexplicably increased Tao insight was definitely not a good thing. Although it could increase the power of Tao insight, it could also turn one into a beast without the ability to think. In fact, he even discovered that there was an additional black paste in his soul. This black paste emitted black gas, and it was actually polluting the galaxies in his divine soul space. Fortunately, Zhuowen's divine soul was so strong that it had 8,000 galaxies, which was equivalent to a small starry sky. This black paste was so small that the range of pollution was extremely limited, but Zhuowen didn't dare be careless, because he knew very well that along with the increase in the number of people he killed, this black paste would accumulate more and more in his divine soul, and there would come a day when it would pollute his entire divine soul. When he thought up to here, Zhuowen became even more cautious. At the same time, he didn't stand out forcefully. So long as those figures didn't offend him, then he would absolutely not make a move, and he would only silently observe. According to Zhuowen's inference, this violet-colored space was very likely related to the so-called Door of Profundity, but he was slightly bewildered. He only knew that the Door of Profundity was related to Tao insight, yet he still didn't know what exactly the Door of Profundity was. Zhuowen sat cross-legged at a corner and utilized his divine sense to completely conceal the aura of his Tao insight. Zhuowen believed that within this space, he was probably the only person that was still able to utilize his divine sense, coupled with the other people in this space that had already lost their reason. So long as they couldn't sense the energy of Tao insight in his body, then they would basically be unable to find him. As the battle continued, the number of people fighting in the sky became fewer and fewer. In the end, only a single figure remained. This was a black-clothed man around the age of 30. His skin was dark, and at this moment, the violet Tao insight on his body was extremely dense and dazzling, as if he was a terrifying violet sun. Zhuowen's gaze became extremely solemn when he sensed the violet Tao insight on this black-clothed man. He was able to sense that the Tao insight on this person's body had even surpassed the 8th level Tao insight and had already touched upon a trace of the 9th level Tao insight. I want to leave this place. Get the hell out here. The black-clothed man floated in midair and raised his head to look at the violet sphere in the sky, and his gaze was filled with desire and battle intent. As soon as the black-clothed man finished speaking, the violet sphere suddenly surged up, and then the violet sphere transformed into an enormous violet beast that possessed 4 heads. Zhuowen's pupils couldn't help but constrict at the instant he saw this enormous beast, because he noticed that the 4 heads of this enormous beast were actually the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. Weren't these 4 sacred beasts the sacred beasts of legend that had once appeared in the heavenly armor continent? Moreover, it wasn't just that. The legends of the 4 sacred beasts were widely spread in the earth of the heaven domain of Huaxia. Chapter 2470. The confinement farm. At the instant the enormous beast appeared, the black-clothed man's eyes burst out with monstrous battle intent. Fight! I'll be able to obtain my freedom by defeating you. The black-clothed man suddenly flashed out. The violet Tao insight on his body was like a blazing sun that spread throughout the entire space. Bang! 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 The black-clothed man collided with the enormous beast, and then a terrifying ripple swept through the entire space. Within this violet world, there were actually countless pitch black holes that were like black holes. When the aftershock gradually disappeared, a figure in a sorry state directly fell down and smashed onto the ground. Zhuowen looked over. He knew that the black-clothed man had already been defeated. Moreover, the enormous beast had only used a single move to defeat the man. The price the man paid was his life. His entire body was torn apart, but he was quickly revived, and the energy of the Tao inside on his body had completely returned to zero. Zhuowen sat cross-legged at a corner and looked up at the enormous beast that had fused with the four divine beasts. Only now did he clearly sense that after the man was killed, the energy of the Tao inside on the man's body was completely devoured by the enormous beast. After devouring the energy of the Tao insight, the enormous beast was perfectly satisfied, and it once again transformed into a violet sphere that was like a violet blazing sun that hung high in the sky. Damn it! There'll be a day when I defeat you, and then I'll regain my freedom and leave this place. The black-clothed man hammered the ground with unwillingness, and then he stood up and walked to another corner before sitting cross-legged and starting to cultivate from scratch. Zhuowen looked around and felt a trace of fear in his heart. He noticed that this space was truly too similar to the confinement farms in the mortal world. The enormous beast devoured the owner of the confinement farm, whereas the animals they were trapped here were the livestock that were being reared in the confinement farm. When the owner needed food to slaughter livestock, they would usually start from the largest and fattest livestock to slaughter. Moreover, wasn't the fattest livestock precisely this black-clothed man? Zhuowen shook his head. So long as they were trapped in this confinement farm and ate the feed provided by the owner of the confinement farm, then these livestock would forever be restrained by the owner and would forever be unable to have the freedom to escape. After Zhuowen killed one of them earlier, he'd already noticed that something was off. The energy of the Tao inside absorbed from here was fundamentally flawed, and there was even an extremely terrifying black paste within it. It was the black paste that caused Zhuowen to be extremely wary. Zhuowen dared guarantee that if he was killed by the enormous beast, then even though he could be revived, the 7th level Tao insight he'd comprehended with great difficulty would be completely devoured by the enormous beast. I have to get that black paste out first. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. The black paste that had entered his sea of consciousness was really a big problem for him. His intuition told him that if the black paste continued to exist in his sea of consciousness, it would be extremely unfavorable for him. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, the few hundred people that had been resurrected all possessed a small amount of Tao insight energy. After that, these people once again tirelessly started to kill each other and seized the Tao insight energy in the bodies of others. Due to the protection of Zhuowen's divine sense, the Tao insight energy in his body didn't leak out at all. This also caused the others to not notice Zhuowen. Zhuowen concentrated his energy and operated the 8,000 galaxies in his sea of consciousness. The terrifying divine sense was like a violent hurricane that constantly consumed the black paste that existed in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. To Zhuowen's pleasant surprise, his powerful starry sky divine sense was really able to consume the black paste, but the consumption rate was extremely slow. After Zhuowen eliminated the black paste with great difficulty, he discovered that a new round of battle had once again come to an end, and the final victor was the black-clothed man again. The black-clothed man's willpower was extremely strong. Although he had been killed by the enormous beast countless times, he would start all over again, every time. After obtaining the final victory, he still wasn't afraid of death and challenged the enormous beast again. The result this time was still the same as the last time. He was still instantly killed by the enormous beast with a single move. Zhuowen's gaze became extremely serious. The black-clothed man had killed everyone, and the Tao insight energy in his body had already reached the level of a trace of 9th level Tao insight. However, he was still instantly killed by the enormous beast with a single move. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to have the strength to fight this enormous beast, he must possess the strength of 9th level Tao insight. Of course, Zhuowen also suspected that the enormous beast being able to kill the black-clothed man so easily was probably related to the black paste. When he thought of this, Zhuowen became even more fearful of the black paste. However, Zhuowen also secretly rejoiced in his heart. His soul was different from ordinary cultivators. So even though there were restrictions here, it wasn't completely restrained and couldn't be used. Moreover, his divine sense was similarly capable of expelling the black paste. Moreover, after expelling the black paste, Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised to discover that his divine sense had actually strengthened slightly. With this discovery, Zhuowen was extremely delighted in his heart. He slowly stood up and withdrew the divine sense that was set up around his body before instantly releasing the aura of his Tao insight. Instantly, the eyes of the two nearby cultivators were filled with a violent intent, and they roared like wild beasts as they flashed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen took a step forward and suddenly blasted out with his fists, instantly killing the two of them. 2 strands of Tao insight energy flowed through his hands and entered his body. At the same time, 2 more black paste appeared in his sea of consciousness. After killing the 2 of them, Zhuowen once again released his divine sense and concealed his Tao insight energy. After that, he sat cross-legged in a corner and started to use his divine sense to refine the black paste. Since this black paste could strengthen his divine sense, why wouldn't Zhuowen do it? Naturally, he planned to slowly temper his divine sense here. Zhuowen knew that as long as his divine soul galaxy could break through 100 million, then his divine sense would become extremely huge, enough to be comparable to the life and death extremes. At that time, if he relied on this divine sense to execute the soul kill, he was afraid that even the life and death extremes experts would be affected. Although it might not cause too much damage to the life and death extremes experts, it could at least restrain the life and death extremes cultivators. Thinking of this, Zhuowen worked even harder to refine the black paste. This was a good thing for him, so he wouldn't let it go just like that. Time passed by minute. Zhuowen didn't know how long he had stayed in this purple space. He only knew that the endless battle repeated over and over again, and the final winner was always the black-clothed man. Every time the black-clothed man challenged the 4 giant beasts, it would end in failure. Finally, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. In the depths of his eyes, which seemed to carry a golden light, was a vast and boundless starry sky. Zhuowen's temperament had become even more unusual. If one looked carefully, they would find that Zhuowen looked very ordinary, but when one looked at him, one would feel an extraordinary feeling. Chapter 2471. The black-clothed man's counterattack at this moment. Even if Zhuowen didn't have to intentionally control his divine sense, the energy of the Tao insight on his body had automatically withdrawn into his body, because in the process of ceaselessly refining the black paste and absorbing the Tao insight, his Tao insight had automatically advanced to the 8th level. This Tao insight was something that he had comprehended on his own. Even though he had borrowed the power of the Tao insight in this space, Zhuowen knew that this Tao insight was completely his own and not something that the master of this space had given him, because the energy of the Tao insight within his body didn't have the hidden dangers of the black paste. Even if he faced the 4 enormous beasts, it was impossible for Zhuowen to be restrained and defeated in a single move like the black-clothed man. The Tao that can be Tao is not an ordinary Tao. The name that can be named is not an ordinary name. The nameless is the beginning of the heavens and the earth. The named is the mother of all things. Therefore, There is nothing that desires to observe its profundities. There is something that desires to observe its mysteries. These two come from the same origin, yet have different names, and they are both called profundities within profundities. The ethereal voice resounded out once more, and the cultivators that sat cross-legged in the surroundings leaped up successively like walking corpses before fighting each other once more and absorbing the Tao insight from each other. Zhuowen walked amidst this slaughter like a lone traveler, and no one noticed his existence, nor did they feel the sound of his footsteps. Zhuowen raised his head to look at the numerous figures that were fighting, and his gaze contained a trace of pity. He knew that these people had completely become livestock in this violet-colored world, and they would have to provide nourishment for the Tao insight of the four enormous beasts for eternity. Moreover, Zhuowen wouldn't join in this meaningless slaughter like they had. He had to find the exit here, and once he found the exit, he would be able to leave this place. Zhuowen believed that since this place was created, then there was surely an exit. Of course, based on the black-clothed man's display, it seemed that he would be able to leave this minor world after defeating the four enormous beasts. But Zhuowen didn't believe in this possibility. Could livestock defeat the owner of the farm? Perhaps it was possible, but Zhuowen knew that this possibility was extremely small. Zhuowen would never use such a risky method if he wasn't completely confident. Moreover, after this period of observation, Zhuowen had figured out the identities of these few hundred people. These people were all the geniuses of the Su clan in the past generations, and they were all geniuses that had comprehended 8th-level Tao insights. If Zhuowen guessed correctly, the black-clothed man who won every time was probably the Su family's ancestor, the guy who obtained the purple jade, and led the Su family to rise. However, it was a pity that the Su clan's successive generations of patriarchs had all become like this, becoming the producers of Tao intent for the four enormous beasts within the door of profundity. In other words, they were the so-called livestock that could be slaughtered by anyone. Now, Zhuowen suspected that the door of profundity was related to the Grand Pure One. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that he had been wrong. He had thought that there would be a teleportation array, or a place to travel through time and space. He had not expected it to be a prison. However, Zhuowen had a premonition that so long as he left this place, then the true exit would absolutely not be the Six Desires' heavenly domain. When he arrived at the edge of the violet-colored prison, Zhuowen noticed that this edge was surrounded by violet-colored fences. As for outside the violet-colored fences, Zhuowen noticed that it was an expanse of violet mist, and he was utterly unable to clearly see what exactly was at the end of the violet mist. Even if Zhuowen's divine sense was extended out, he noticed that it was completely blurry. In other words, even his divine sense was utterly unable to detect anything within this violet mist. Zhuowen's brows knit together. He noticed that this world of violet mist was truly too strange, and he kept having the feeling that the other end of the violet mist was surely related to the exit. Moreover, if he wanted to leave, then he had to break through the iron fences here. But during this period of time, Zhuowen had ceaselessly investigated, and he noticed that this iron fence was utterly impossible to break through, unless it was the strength of a 9th-level Tao insight. Otherwise, breaking through the iron fence was utterly a delusion. Roar! A bestial roar exploded out of thin air, and the four giant beasts appeared once again. However, the black-clothed man was still awe-inspiring and fearless. He had once again obtained the final victory and faced the four giant beasts once again. Zhuowen turned around and raised his head to look at the tenacious black-clothed man. His gaze revealed that he was moved. After observing for a period of time, Zhuowen noticed that the rest of the people had all fallen into this slaughter, and only the black-clothed man's consciousness was still hovering between being clear-headed and being lost. It was precisely because of this that the black-clothed man was able to obtain the final victory every time. Roar! The four giant beasts roared loudly, and their gigantic beast claws descended from the sky, crushing towards the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man let out a long howl towards the sky, and the violet intent on his entire body suddenly boiled and actually transformed into a violet mist that stretched as far as the eye could see. Then, within this violet mist, a pattering of violet rain poured down. The black-clothed man clenched his fists in the air, and a violet sword with a swirling violet light condensed in each of his hands. He has touched the threshold of the 9th level Tao insight. Zhuowen's gaze revealed astonishment as he looked at the black-clothed man who was bathed in violet jade. The four giant beasts revealed even more furious expressions. They never imagined that this human, who was their food, would actually be able to comprehend a trace of the 9th level Tao insight. He was clearly just food, yet he actually dared to attack his master, and this caused the four giant beasts to be extremely furious. The four giant beasts intended to properly teach this stubborn human a lesson. Bang! The four giant beasts' gigantic claws blasted towards the black-clothed man, and those enormous claws contained terrifying Tao insight. As expected, these four giant beasts have grasped the strength of the 9th level Tao insight. Sensing the giant beast's claws, Zhuowen's gaze flickered slightly, and he lightly sighed in his heart. However, what puzzled Zhuowen was that the might of the claws blasted out by these four giant beasts wasn't as strong as he imagined. It seemed to be stronger than the trace of the 9th level Tao insight that he had comprehended in the past, but it wasn't that much stronger. This feeling was very strange. Zhuowen clearly saw that these four giant beasts had grasped the 9th level Tao insight, but in his eyes, he instead felt that the power of these giant beasts' 9th level Tao insight wasn't very strong. In his senses, he felt that the 9th level Tao insight of these giant beasts seemed to be lacking something, but he couldn't figure out what it was exactly. This claw directly tore apart the violet mist, and it blasted towards the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man roared towards the sky, and the violet sword in his hands suddenly slashed out. On the other hand, he was like a ghost as he disappeared on the spot. Not only did he dodge the giant beast's claws, but the terrifying violet sword chi from his two swords directly blasted open a huge wound on the giant beast's claws. The four giant beasts were extremely furious, and they blasted out their claws one after another. However, after the black-clothed man had touched the threshold of the 9th level Tao insight, his mind was much clearer than before. As he dodged the giant beast's attacks, he continuously blasted the giant beast's bodies with his sword. Chapter 2472. Su Clan's First Ancestor Roar. The four enormous beasts roared, and actually split into four, transforming into the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. But their entire bodies were formed from violet light. The four sacred beasts split into four directions and blasted towards the black-clothed man in unison. The black-clothed man obviously never imagined that the four enormous beasts would split into four, and he was only able to block the attacks from three directions, whereas the one on his back was directly smashed heavily by the black tortoise's python tail, causing him to let out a muffled groan before directly smashing onto the ground. Moreover, the cooperation of the four sacred beasts was extremely tacit. At the instant the black-clothed man fell, they once again transformed into four violet lights, and terrifying attacks descended onto the black-clothed man successively. Subsequently, the black-clothed man practically suffered a beating passively. The attacks of the four sacred beasts were too terrifying, and if it wasn't for the black-clothed man comprehending a trace of 9th level Tao insight, he would probably have been killed at this moment. But even then, the black-clothed man was still on the verge of collapse, and he seemed as if he would fall at any moment. Zhuowen glanced at him before silently sitting cross-legged on the ground, as he knew that the black-clothed man would die without a doubt in another 10 moves. Sure enough, a shrill cry resounded out as the black-clothed man was torn into pieces by the 4 sacred beasts. Subsequently, the black-clothed man revived once more at a corner of the violet-colored world, but the energy of the 9th level Tao insight in his body had already been completely stripped away. Zhuowen shook his head. He knew that now that the black-clothed man had been killed, he would probably have no chance to leave this place in the future. The black-clothed man thought of this as well, and his gaze revealed a sense of loss and despair. But in next to no time, his gaze once again emitted hope and unswerving determination, and he once again sat cross-legged on the ground and waited for the next round of slaughter. All of this was noticed by Zhuowen, and Zhuowen slightly admired this black-clothed man in his heart. If this black-clothed man was really the Sioux clan's first ancestor, then this person had been trapped here for countless years. But this person still wasn't crushed by this sort of long period of loneliness, and he was instead still filled with hope and unswerving determination. This person's willpower was something that even Zhuowen felt slightly inferior to, but it was all thanks to this person that Zhuowen found out about the true strength of the 4 divine beasts. And he knew that so long as he was able to smoothly comprehend a trace of 9th level Tao insight, then he would be able to obtain victory. As for why the black-clothed man had failed, Zhuowen suspected that it had something to do with the black paste. It was likely that the black paste had caused severe interference to the black-clothed man's sea of consciousness during the battle, which was why he had failed. With Zhuowen's eyesight, he actually felt that the black-clothed man would win. Even if he couldn't win, it was impossible for him to be defeated so easily by the 4 sacred beasts. The ethereal voice sounded again. Zhuowen smiled and slowly stood up. This time, he was prepared to participate in this battle. His Tao insight had already reached the 8th level, and the number of divine soul galaxies in his sea of consciousness had reached a terrifying number of over 100 million. With the current strength of his spiritual sense, that black paste would be crushed by his spiritual sense in an instant and would not affect him at all. The reason Zhuowen was participating in the battle this time was naturally for the sake of charging into the 9th level Tao insight. After all, the black-clothed man had charged into a trace of 9th level Tao insight from nothing, whereas Zhuowen had relied on himself to comprehend 8th level Tao insight, and his starting point was much higher than everyone here. So he was confident that if he obtained the final victory, then his Tao insight would transform to the terrifying 9th level. Kill! Numerous figures leaped into midair with killing intent that shot into the sky. The smile on the corners of Zhuowen's mouth grew wider and wider as he walked forward slowly, and his footsteps grew swifter and swifter as the battle intent in his gaze rose swiftly. Zhuowen let out a long howl as he leaped into midair, and then his hands clenched in the air to condense 2 violet-colored swords. He strode out step by step, and all the cultivators that blocked his path were completely annihilated by him. As he felt the Tao insight energy that rose swiftly within his body, Zhuowen felt extremely carefree in his heart, and his spiritual sense rose along with it. The surrounding cultivators were basically unable to withstand a single sword strike from Zhuowen. The black-clothed man noticed how terrifying Zhuowen was as well, and his brows knit together. Yet he didn't seek death by battling Zhuowen first, and he instead turned to battle the other cultivators. He was too familiar with the energy of Tao insight on Zhuowen's body, as this was an aura that only 8th level Tao insights possessed. Wasn't he courting death by battling such a ferocious person now? Of course, the black-clothed man was extremely puzzled because this white-clothed young man was obviously an unfamiliar face. He'd fought here for so long, yet it was the first time he'd seen this white-clothed young man. Moreover, the battle had only just begun, yet this white-clothed young man already possessed the energy of 8th level Tao insight, and this caused the black-clothed man to feel rather unbalanced in his heart. At the same time, he fought even more madly and practically disregarded his life. The two of them were like the black and white impermanence that reaped the lives of the surrounding cultivators, and they even greedily swallowed the energy of Tao insight within the bodies of the cultivators that were killed. When the last person was killed by Zhuowen with a swing of his sword, Zhuowen felt the Tao insight within his body had completely risen to the peak of the 8th level Tao insight. Zhuowen stopped and looked at the black-clothed man before him. He knew that so long as he killed this black-clothed man, then he would be able to break through the barrier of the 8th level Tao insight and enter the profundities of the 9th level Tao insight. The black-clothed man had a serious gaze. He'd attained the 8th level Tao insight as well. Yet, he wasn't at the peak of the 8th level Tao insight like Zhuowen, and he'd only just entered the 8th level Tao insight. After all, Zhuowen's starting point was too high. He'd attained the 8th level Tao insight from the beginning, and his speed of slaughter was much swifter than the black-clothed man. Let's fight. Zhuowen held the violet sword with both hands as he looked indifferently at the black-clothed man before him. The black-clothed man didn't answer, yet he'd used his actions to answer Zhuowen. Swoosh, swoosh. The two of them transformed into two violet lights, and misty violet mist converged in the sky above them to transform into a surging violet mist world. Bang, bang, bang. Instantly, the two of them collided, and the dense sounds of metal colliding sounded out from within the violet mist. Two indistinct figures swiftly moved through the violet mist, and they collided with each other to create extremely terrifying sparks. Rumble! Suddenly, the violet mist roiled as a figure abruptly flew out, and then a violet sword flashed out from within the violet mist to pierce through this person's chest. After that, a formidable force brought along this person to fall to the ground and firmly nailed him to the ground. The black-clothed man raised his head with difficulty, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile as he looked at the young man in fluttering white clothes slowly walking over from within the roiling violet mist. In countless years, you're the first person to defeat me. What's your name? The black-clothed man coughed up blood as he asked. I'm Zhuowen. Zhuowen said indifferently, You're not a descendant of the Su clan. The black-clothed man's eyes stared wide open as he spoke with disbelief. Who said that only members of the Su clan are able to comprehend the energy of Tao insight? Zhuowen replied with a question. The black-clothed man's gaze froze, and he coughed up another mouthful of blood as he said with a smile, That's true. Since you're able to defeat me, it means that you're not ordinary. Perhaps you'll be able to defeat the master of Tao insight, and at that time regain your freedom, the black-clothed man said with a blazing gaze. Not perhaps, but definitely. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he pulled out the violet sword from the black-clothed man's body. After that, the man let out a muffled groan and completely breathed his last, and the energy of Tao insight in his body was completely absorbed by Zhuowen. Of course, the black paste was extremely terrifying as it invaded Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Chapter 2473. Violet Sun. The terrifying black-colored paste was like a black cloud that completely covered Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Even if his soul was extremely formidable and terrifying, it was slightly strenuous for him to resist so much black-colored paste. Soul kill. Zhuowen's eyes abruptly opened, and he immediately executed the formidable divine sense art, soul kill, within his sea of consciousness. His divine sense that was like tidewater transformed into numerous terrifying storms that ceaselessly annihilated the black-colored paste that was scattered throughout his sea of consciousness. After executing it successively a few times, the black-colored paste within Zhuowen's sea of consciousness was finally completely eliminated. After that, Zhuowen felt a wave of coolness throughout his body as the energy of the Tao insight within his body erupted like a volcano and ceaselessly increased and accumulated. Rumble! Countless violet lights flashed out explosively from Zhuowen's body, and the violet lights slowly condensed into material to transform into misty violet mist. After that, the violet mist started to spray out violet rain that became more and more intense, and it seemed to have become a downpour. As he bathed in the violent violet rain, Zhuowen knew that he'd once again come into contact with that trace of 9th level Tao insight. It's still not enough. Zhuowen's gaze focused as he suddenly swung the violet swords in his hands. Instantly, the violet mist in the sky roiled as the violent violet rain started to solidify and actually condense into extremely solid violet ice. At this moment, the black-clothed man that had been reborn raised his head to look at the violent violet ice that descended, and he couldn't help but gape. This kid has completely stepped into the threshold of 9th level Tao insight. The black-clothed man's gaze revealed respect, and at the same time, there was a trace of hope. He wanted to see if this white-clothed young man that had stepped into the threshold of 9th level Tao insight was able to defeat those 4 enormous beasts. Get the fuck out here. Zhuowen raised his head to look at the violet-colored ball as he spoke indifferently. As soon as these words were spoken, the violet-colored ball roiled violently, and then a roar resounded out as an enormous violet-colored enormous beast leaped out. But the violet-colored enormous beast revealed a trace of surprise at the instant it saw Zhuowen. Obviously, it wasn't the black-clothed man that challenged it this time, so it was slightly curious instead. But it quickly calmed down. Within this violet-colored barrier, no matter who challenged it, that person would become its meal in the end, so it didn't really care. Roar! The purple behemoth roared and waved its huge claws at Zhuowen. It seemed very casual. Apparently, the purple behemoth did not care much about Zhuowen. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. When he had summoned the purple beast, Zhuowen had already retracted the purple ice. Puchi! Zhuowen leaped up and dodged the giant purple beast's claw. The purple swords in his hands slashed at the beast's claw without hesitation, directly cutting off the huge beast's claw. Ow, ow, ow! The purple giant beast let out a blood-curdling scream as its eyes turned red. It roared angrily, its killing intent boiling. It had never thought that one day its claws would be chopped off by a mere human martial artist. This was simply a disgrace to it. It wanted to tear the human in front of it into pieces. However, just as the giant purple beast was enraged, the white-clothed young man had already stepped into the air. The purple swords in his hands merged together, and the purple swords instantly grew to a size of 10 feet. In an instant, they brushed past the giant purple beast. The giant purple beast did not even have time to react before it was cut in half by the huge purple sword. Zhuowen landed on the ground. Before he could turn around, a sense of danger rose in his heart. The purple sword in his hand suddenly blasted behind him. Bang, 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 bang. For continuous attacks smashed onto Zhuowen's purple sword. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and could not help but retreat. Only then did he realize that the giant purple beast that he had cut in half had turned into the 4 sacred beasts. Just now, it was the 4 sacred beasts that had attacked him 4 times. Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. The moment he killed the giant purple beast, he was already on guard against the 4 sacred beasts. That was why he could react in an instant and block the terrifying attacks of the 4 sacred beasts. Speaking of which, Zhuowen still had to thank the black-clothed man. If the black-clothed man had not forced the giant purple beast to reveal its trump card, Zhuowen would not have been able to deal with the giant purple beast's attack. Boom, boom, boom. The moment Zhuowen blocked the attack, the four sacred beasts spread out in four directions of Zhuowen as if they had teleported and began to attack crazily. Zhuowen's gaze turned cold. The purple sword in his hands suddenly swung out. Instantly, countless purple mist spread out and formed four purple ice walls around him, blocking the attack of the four sacred beasts. Although the purple ice walls had been completely destroyed by the four sacred beasts' attack, it had bought enough time for Zhuowen. The moment the purple ice walls shattered, Zhuowen suddenly rushed towards the purple vermilion bird and the purple white tiger. The purple sword in his hands mercilessly pierced into the space between the two sacred beasts' eyebrows. Puchi! The moment the sword pierced into the space between the vermilion bird and the white tiger's eyebrows, the azure dragon and the black tortoise's attacks mercilessly bombarded Zhuowen's chest. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to instantly kill the white tiger and the vermilion bird, he would have to withstand the attacks of the azure dragon and the black tortoise. Puchi! Zhuowen suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He flew backwards in a sorry state and heavily smashed into the purple fence at the edge of the barrier. And because of this, Zhuowen killed the vermilion bird and the white tiger. The azure dragon and the black tortoise were unable to restrain their anger. With a roar, they turned into two purple lights and chased after Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood up and instantly slashed out with the purple sword in his hand. Instantly, the boundless purple intent turned into a terrifying ocean. This ocean was completely purple. Within this purple ocean, time and space seemed to have frozen. At the end of the violet sea, a violet sun slowly rose, and a strand of the energy of space Tao insight that was combined with space Tao insight gushed out violently from the violet sun. The violet energy was like a flood that had breached a dam, and it was too terrifying. The moment the azure dragon and the black tortoise entered the purple ocean, their bodies stiffened. It would be difficult for them to move an inch in this purple ocean. The azure dragon and the black tortoise constantly cried out. In this purple ocean, they felt the threat of death and fear. The terrifying purple waves slammed against the two huge beasts, causing them to totter as if they would fall at any moment. Zhuowen looked at all of this with a confused gaze. Earlier, when he saw the white tiger and the azure dragon pounce at him at the same time, he subconsciously used the time and space ability Sun over the Sea. But the moment he used it, it was as if he was still in the state of Tao intent. He had actually merged the power of Tao intent into the time and space ability by accident. But to Zhuowen's pleasant surprise, the might of the space-time divine ability that was fused with Tao insights had actually increased by too much, and its might caused even him, the one that executed it, to feel deep terror. The instant the purple sun completely rose to its highest point, the purple ocean completely boiled and exploded. Countless waves rushed into the sky. The terrifying energy seemed to be able to destroy the world. Bang! 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 Continuous sounds of explosions came from the purple ocean. The azure dragon and the black tortoise, who were in the purple ocean, cried out in grief and completely disappeared in the purple ocean. Under this terrifying ability, countless cracks and marks appeared on the tough and terrifying purple barrier around them. In the end, it completely exploded. Chapter 2474. Tyrannical Tao Slaughtering Technique. Zhuowen, thank you. Thank you for freeing us. I think you must be very confused about all of this. Take this. Everything you want to know about the Door of Profundity is inside. Suddenly, a weak voice sounded. Not far away, the black-clothed man struggled to stand up and tossed a thumb-sized purple crystal to Zhuowen. At this moment, the black-clothed man's entire body was suffused with purple light. This purple light was constantly disintegrating the black-clothed man's body. It was obvious that the black-clothed man couldn't hold on for much longer. You should be the Sioux clan's ancestor, right? Zhuowen put away the purple crystal and asked calmly. The black-clothed man nodded and said, "Yes, I am indeed the Sioux clan's ancestor. I originally thought that I could revive the Sioux clan, but I didn't expect that I would implicate the great Sioux clan. I am the Sioux clan's eternal sinner. This purple crystal contains the Sioux clan's lost cultivation technique. I hope that Zhuo Xiaoyu can finish learning it and help me hand it to the Sioux clan. If the Sioux clan has already perished, Zhuo Xiaoyu can take it yourself." After he finished speaking, the black-clothed man's eyes revealed a look of relief. Shortly after, his entire body dissipated into specks of purple light. Wait a moment. When Zhuowen still planned to ask how to leave this place, the black-clothed man had already completely dissipated into nothingness. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He looked at the surrounding purple mist and was somewhat troubled. Although he had escaped from the purple cage, he didn't know how to leave this place. Let's see what's inside this purple crystal first. Zhuowen sighed lightly. He planned to open the purple crystal and take a look. He knew that since the black-clothed man gave this purple crystal to him, there must be something important inside. As for the Sioux family's lost cultivation technique, Zhuowen did not take it to heart. The Sioux family was so weak, so how strong could the cultivation technique passed down in this family be? He mainly wanted to see the purple jade obtained by the Sioux clan's ancestor and the origin of this mysterious door of profundity. When he was comprehending Tao insight all those years ago, he'd once seen the door of profundity, and even the Grand Pure One was extremely fearful and fervent towards it. However, the door of profundity that appeared at that time was merely an illusory door, while the one Zhuowen was currently in was a real door of profundity. This purple crystal was a storage divine tool, and the space inside was even larger than Zhuowen's spirit ring. The space within the purple crystal was indeed large, but there were very few things inside. Aside from a few jade slips, there were some scattered divine medicines, divine weapons, divine stones, and so on. Furthermore, Zhuowen discovered that the divine herbs, divine weapons, and divine stones had all lost their divinity, and the luster on their surface had dimmed. He knew that this was because these things had been here for too long. It could be seen that the black-robed man had been trapped here for who knew how many years. Even the divine medicine and divine weapons had completely lost their divine nature. Zhuowen knew that the only useful things in the purple crystal were those few jade slips. There were a total of 4 jade slips, and Zhuowen took them all out and looked through them one by one. The first 2 were diary-like things, and they recorded everything the black-robed man had seen and heard while he was still alive. Zhuowen directly skipped these 2 jade slips and started to look through the 3rd jade slip. It's actually a divine ability, and it's even a Tao confirmation divine ability. The instant Zhuowen picked up the 3rd jade slip, he was completely stunned, because when he just looked at the introduction of this jade slip, he discovered that this jade slip actually recorded a Tao confirmation divine ability. Zhuowen felt that it was slightly inconceivable. How could a mere Sioux clan possess a Tao confirmation divine ability? This wouldn't be the Sioux clan's inherited cultivation technique, right? Zhuowen swallowed his saliva and muttered to himself with a slight tremble. However, after looking through it once, Zhuowen was slightly disappointed because this Tao confirmation divine ability was incomplete, and it was extremely incomplete. This divine ability was called the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique. According to the introduction, this technique could kill the heavenly Tao master once it was refined to the large success stage. Zhuowen didn't know what kind of existence the heavenly Tao master was, but he knew that the heavenly Tao master should be a realm among Tao confirmation experts. Judging from this introduction, this tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique was extremely powerful, especially when it was refined to the large success stage. It could actually kill the so-called heavenly Tao master. Unfortunately, this tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique was extremely incomplete. This technique had a total of 3 moves, but there was only one move in it. Originally, Zhuowen thought that this tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique was a Tao confirmation divine ability after all, so there should be a cultivation limit to cultivating this divine ability. However, after looking through it several times, he found that there were no restrictions in it. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. If there were no restrictions on cultivation, it meant that he could comprehend and cultivate it now. Zhuowen put away the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique. He didn't plan to comprehend it now. He planned to find the exit first. Thinking of this, Zhuowen picked up the last jade slip and began to read the contents inside. He knew that this jade slip should record the origins of the purple jade and the door of profundity, as well as why the Su family's geniuses of the past were trapped in the door of profundity. After reading it, Zhuowen put down the jade slip, his eyes filled with shock. The door of profundity is a passage to another, larger world. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice, but his gaze became extremely serious. The contents of the jade slip were completely recorded by the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man accidentally found the core of this abandoned star and found the door of profundity. He also obtained the mysterious purple jade from the door of profundity. Relying on the purple jade, the black-clothed man quickly comprehended Tao intent. With the help of Tao intent, his cultivation speed was even faster than before. Soon, he became a famous expert in the 6 Desires heavenly domain and attracted the attention of the experts in the 6 Desires palace. However, when the black-clothed man's Tao intent rose to the 8th level, he would be summoned by the door of profundity. At that time, the black-clothed man left the purple jade in the Su family as a keepsake for the patriarch. However, he didn't expect that it would never return. The purple jade was passed down generation after generation. Because of the purple jade, the Su family could produce powerful geniuses in every generation. However, every generation's geniuses would mysteriously disappear. The black-clothed man was the first person to enter the door of profundity. In the beginning, the door of profundity didn't have a Tao intent barrier. The black-clothed man walked aimlessly in the door of profundity for nearly 1,000 years. At the edge of the door of profundity, he saw a transparent barrier. This barrier was extremely strange. He could see the other side of the barrier, but the living beings on the other side couldn't see him. The black-clothed man stayed on this side of the barrier for hundreds of years. During these hundreds of years, he had been observing the other side of the barrier. He was surprised to find that the other side of the barrier wasn't the 6 Desires heavenly domain. It wasn't even a place in any of the 8 heavenly domains. Chapter 2475. Barrier. Moreover, he also saw countless powerhouses in that world. The 2 extremes of life and death, which were extremely rare in the 6 Desires palace, were simply too common in that world. The black-robed man even saw many powerhouses that even he couldn't see through. The aura of these powerhouses was far stronger than the 2 extremes of life and death. He knew that these powerhouses were definitely the legendary Tao confirming powerhouses. It was precisely because he saw so many terrifying powerhouses that the black-robed man guessed that the other side of the door of profundity should be another terrifying world. Until one day, a strange purple light rushed out from the other side of the door of profundity. This purple light ignored the barrier of the door of profundity and actually directly passed through the barrier to enter the door of profundity. Soon after, this purple light transformed into 4 giant beasts, which were the masters of Tao that the black-clothed man spoke of. The next thing that happened was that the masters of Tao intent set up a barrier in the door of profundity and began to raise the cultivators who entered the door of profundity from the outside world, allowing these cultivators to provide nutrients for their Tao intent for free. The other world that the door of profundity leads to, could it be the ninth heaven that Palace Master Jing Yun mentioned? Zhuowen muttered to himself, but in his heart he was 90% sure that the powerful world should be the ninth heaven. What's strange about Zhuowen is that the four giant beasts aren't creatures from the eight heavens, but from the ninth heaven. When Zhuowen saw the four giant beasts and the purple jade before, he thought that the door of profundity was related to Tai Ching, but now it seems that it doesn't have much to do with Tai Ching. The power of this Tao intent probably came from the ninth heaven. It's just that Zhuowen was puzzled. Tai Ching was just the master of a small heaven among the eight heavens. So why did he have the power of Tao intent? Moreover, with Tai Ching's comprehension and strength, Zhuowen knew that the former must have comprehended the ninth level Tao intent, and the realm of the Tao intent he grasped was definitely above his own. Thinking of this, Zhuowen felt that Tai Ching was becoming more and more mysterious. After putting away the jade slip, Zhuowen followed the direction indicated on the jade slip and walked forward, and it wasn't long before he arrived at the edge of the door of profundity. At the edge of the door of profundity, there was indeed a barrier. The surface of the barrier rippled like a wall of water, and he could clearly see the scenery on the other side of the barrier. Outside the barrier was a vast starry sky, and in the center of this vast starry sky, there was a huge floating continent that was much larger than the eight heavens. This continent was surrounded by countless suns, moons, and stars. Inside the continent, there are countless life forms and vast amounts of rich energy. Looking at the huge and boundless continent, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He knew that the starry sky in front of him should be the ninth heaven. I wonder if I can enter the ninth heaven through this barrier. Zhuowen muttered to himself. He stretched out his right hand and touched the barrier. He was surprised to find that ripples appeared on the surface of the barrier, but it did not resist him. Soon, Zhuowen's right hand reached out of the barrier. Zhuowen retracted his right hand, and his eyes became cold. He didn't plan to go to the ninth heaven for now. Not to mention that he still has many things to do in the eight heavens. With his current strength, going to the ninth heaven is just asking for trouble. From the jade slip given to him by the man in black, he knew that the two extremes of life and death are extremely common in the ninth heaven. It can be seen that the overall strength of the ninth heaven is far beyond that of the eight heavens. Moreover, there are still some secrets in the eight heavens that he doesn't know. Also, he has to fulfill the promise of the mysterious head, so it's not appropriate to leave the eight heavens now. Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and he sighed softly. When the time is right, I will come here again, and then enter the ninth heaven through this door of profundity. Zhuowen has a feeling that this door of profundity has a barrier that leads to the ninth heaven. This is definitely a major news that will cause a sensation in the eight heavens. Although he doesn't know if there are other ways for the cultivators of the eight heavens to go to the ninth heaven, he knows that in the past, only Tao-confirming powerhouses can leave the eight heavens. It can be seen that the price for the eight heavens to go to the ninth heaven is extremely high, but he has the door of profundity that allows him to go to the ninth heaven without paying any price. If this is known by the masters of the eight heavens, it will probably cause them to take action together. After looking at the barrier again, Zhuowen left this place and left the door of profundity along the original path. Standing in front of the door of profundity, Zhuowen found that only 3 days have passed in the outside world, but he felt like more than 10 years have passed in the door of profundity. Zhuowen arranged a concealment array outside the door of profundity, and at the same time, a terrifying chain of killing arrays and illusion arrays. At the same time, he strengthened the outer defense of the star core a lot before leaving this place with peace of mind. This star itself has reached the end of its life, so it is generally difficult to attract the attention of other cultivators. In addition, Zhuowen arranged a concealment array, so even if Palace Master Wuju comes in person, he won't be able to find the door of profundity here. In addition, Zhuowen also arranged a temporary teleportation array nearby. The next time he wants to come here, he can activate the teleportation array and directly teleport here. It won't be so troublesome. After doing this, Zhuowen left this place. He plans to return to Heavenly Spirit Star and hand the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique to the Su family. After all, this is the only thing that the black-clothed man left for the Su family. Of course, before handing it to the Su family, Zhuowen has already memorized the contents of the first move of the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique. On the way to Heavenly Spirit Star, Zhuowen also silently comprehended this powerful divine ability. In addition, Zhuowen is also modifying his space-time divine ability. He plans to combine the space-time divine ability with Tao intent so that the power of the purple sun displayed will be much stronger than the broken sun. Moreover, Zhuowen has always been worried that there will be problems with the Tao intent he learned from the Taiqing sect. However, ever since he entered the door of profundity, Zhuowen can feel that the Tao intent on his body has completely transformed. The faintly discernible obstruction in the past has completely disappeared. Zhuowen knows that the obstruction should come from the Taiqing sect. However, after experiencing the baptism of the door of profundity, he finally completely got rid of the hidden danger that the Taiqing sect caused in his Tao intent. My strength is still too weak. If my strength can reach the life enlightenment realm, I'm afraid I can use the door of profundity for my own use. Zhuowen secretly shook his head, but soon became a little distressed. His purpose of coming to the Su family's forbidden area is to leave the Six Desires heavenly realm. Now, there is indeed a place to leave the Six Desires heavenly realm, but it is a boundary that leads to the ninth heaven. It seems that I can only let my clone pass through the 19th wind disaster as soon as possible. With the help of Great Brahma's trick on my clone, I can be directly teleported to the Tower of Hanoi. Chapter 2476. Massacring Finger. As he had found out the truth about Su family's forbidden land, Zhuowen wasn't in a hurry to rush back. He took his time and comprehended tyrannical art of massacring Finger as he flew. Tyrannical art of massacring Finger was indeed exquisite. From Zhuowen's point of view, the power of tyrannical art of massacring Finger was above his space-time magic. Even if his space-time magic and Tao meaning were combined to create the purple sun on the sea, it wouldn't be comparable to the first move of tyrannical art of massacring Finger. The first move of tyrannical art of massacring Finger was called Massacring Finger. From the introduction, it seemed that Massacring Finger used one's finger as a medium to trigger the descent of Heaven Wei and transform into a terrifying finger of Heaven Wei. Plus, the finger of Heaven Wei had a form and was extremely powerful, enough to kill the master of Heaven Wei. Of course, it varied from person to person. Killing the master of Heaven Wei was naturally the realm of the master of Heaven Wei. If Zhuowen were to learn tyrannical art of massacring Finger, with his current cultivation, wouldn't he be courting death if he were to perform massacring Finger to attack the master of Heaven Wei? While comprehending, Zhuowen also tried to perform tyrannical art of massacring Finger. However, in the end, Zhuowen couldn't withstand the terrifying power of Heaven Wei. Hence, he didn't perform it successfully in the end. Of course, if Zhuowen were to perform tyrannical art of massacring Finger with all his might, he would be able to succeed. However, the price he would have to pay would be terrifying. It could be said that if it wasn't because he had no other choice, Zhuowen really didn't intend to perform the move. Of course, in Zhuowen's estimation, if his doppelganger could become real God triple extreme, he could completely ignore the backlash of tyrannical art of massacring Finger. With real God triple extreme strong physique, he could withstand the backlash of Heaven Wei. Besides, when his original body's cultivation reached the extremities of life and death, he could forcefully perform tyrannical art of massacring finger. Half a month later, Zhuowen returned to Tianling's star. When he returned to Suzhou City, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Suzhou City was terrifyingly quiet, and there was no sign of life. Zhuowen's gaze hardened, his will radiated outwards, and he discovered that there was no one in Suzhou. It was as if everyone had evaporated into thin air. What's going on? Where's the Su family? Zhuowen had an ominous feeling in his heart. His divine sense radiated out again and instantly covered the entire Heavenly Spirit Planet. Then he realized that Heavenly Spirit Planet was empty. There were no other living creatures. Zhuowen's consciousness entered the depths of the Heavenly Spirit Planet. Immediately, he discovered a huge blood fiend array within the planet's core. This blood fiend array was much bigger than the one set up by the heretic cultivator. Its influence was enough to cover the entire Heavenly Spirit Planet. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He thought of a bad possibility. The blood fiend array, hidden deep in the planet's core, might have refined the entire Heavenly Spirit Planet. You actually came back. I thought you ran away with your tail between your legs. In the sky above Heavenly Spirit Planet, two figures appeared. One of them was a middle-aged man wearing blood-red clothes. Zhuowen was extremely unfamiliar with this person. He had never seen him before. However, beside the man in blood-red clothes was a young woman with a voluptuous figure. Zhuowen was not unfamiliar with her. This young woman was the palace master of Xiang Desire Palace, Xiang Lan. Where are the people on Heavenly Spirit Planet? Zhuowen asked with a gloomy face. They're all dead. It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, they wouldn't have died. That's why the people on Heavenly Spirit Planet die, because of you. Xiang Lan indifferently looked down at Zhuowen. Zhuowen slowly calmed down. However, the murderous intent in his eyes was like a volcano erupting. It surged out violently. To the people on Heavenly Spirit Planet, he was just a passerby. There was no one there that was worthy of his nostalgia. However, Su was the first person he had met from Heavenly Spirit Planet. Thinking about how an innocent girl like Su had been cruelly killed, the anger in Zhuowen's heart was like a flood. Die! Zhuowen let out a low roar. His right foot suddenly stomped on the void, and his entire body shot out, rushing towards the man in blood-red clothes and Xiang Lan. The man in blood-red clothes took a few steps back, looked at Xiang Lan beside him, and said with a flattering smile, "Palace Master Xiang Lan, I'll leave this boy to you." The man in blood-red clothes had seen the video of the battle between Zhuowen and Kuang Li. He was extremely wary of the space-time divine ability that this boy possessed. He was very self-aware. He knew that, with his strength, he really couldn't resist the space-time divine ability that Zhuowen used. Therefore, he wisely didn't intend to intervene. Xiang Lan snorted lightly. She didn't care much about Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen's previous performance in Six Desires Palace was extraordinary, he was only an 8 steps void heaven expert after all. In her eyes, an 8 steps void heaven expert was no different from an ant. She was a dignified life enlightenment expert. She could completely crush this boy. Longwen, don't worry. I won't kill you. Instead, I'll capture you alive and bring you to Palace Master Wuju. You're just an ant with an 8 steps void heaven expert. How dare you touch Six Desires Palace's desireless? As Xiang Lan spoke, she formed a seal with her jade-like hands. Immediately, countless ice crystals condensed in front of her, condensing into a huge ice pagoda. The tip of the ice pagoda was extremely sharp, and it emitted a brilliance that was difficult to look at. Whoosh! Xiang Lan waved her hand, and the ice pagoda quickly shot out, rushing straight towards Zhuowen. After doing this, Xianglan crossed her arms in front of her chest and coldly looked at Zhuowen, who was rushing in front of her. In her opinion, this Zhuowen couldn't block her ice pagoda at all. Although this ice pagoda was just a casual attack, she had used a powerful, profound, life divine power. It wasn't something that a cultivator below the life enlightenment realm could casually resist. The corner of Zhuowen's mouth was full of a sneer. This Xianglan was really too arrogant. She actually looked down on him. This wasn't the first time he faced a life enlightenment realm expert. Before he advanced to the 8 steps void heaven, he had killed Lu Haotian, who was at the life enlightenment realm in the divine pill secret realm. Although Lu Haotian wasn't killed by Zhuowen, at that time, Lu Haotian couldn't kill Zhuowen even if he attacked with his full strength. But now, Zhuowen was no longer the same as before. Not only had his cultivation advanced to the 8 steps void heaven, but he had also comprehended the 9th level Tao intent in the door of profundity. He had also learned the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique, not to mention Xianglan's casual attack. Even if she attacked with her full strength, it wouldn't be much of a threat to Zhuowen. Zhuowen was in midair. He took out the king's sword in his hand and fiercely attacked. The deathly aura attached to the surface of the king's sword condensed into a terrifying sword light, which violently swept out. Rumble! The huge ice pagoda was directly shattered by the deathly aura sword light. Zhuowen stepped on countless ice shards and quickly rushed in front of Xianglan. The king's sword in his hand directly pierced towards Xianglan's heart. Xianglan's beautiful eyes shrank. She looked at Zhuowen, who had already rushed in front of her, in disbelief. She didn't expect that a mere 8 steps void heaven ant would be able to break her attack so easily. Puchi, Xianglan only had time to avoid her vital points, and her chest was pierced by the king's sword. Chapter 2477. Killing a life comprehension, realm expert Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and could not help but retreat a few hundred steps. On the other hand, Xianglan spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated a few thousand steps. She covered her wound and looked at Zhuowen in shock. She had never thought that a mere 8 steps void sky cultivator would be able to injure a life comprehension realm expert like her. The man in blood-red clothes, who had already dodged in advance, looked at this scene as if he had seen a ghost. He was even more shocked than Xianglan. He had seen the video of the battle between Zhuowen and Quangli too many times. He knew how strong this kid was. He might be stronger than a 9 steps void sky cultivator, but there was a huge gap between him and a life comprehension realm expert. But now, this kid had not even used his space-time divine ability, and he was actually able to injure a life comprehension realm expert like Xianglan. This really shocked the man in blood-red clothes. How is this kid an 8 steps void sky cultivator? He's simply a life comprehension realm expert. Damn it, I have to leave this place quickly. After discovering Zhua, Wen's strength, the crimson-robed man immediately had the intention to retreat. Soon after, he slowly retreated. He planned to take advantage of the time when Zhuowen and Xianglan were still fighting to leave this place. However, he soon realized that a large hand had suddenly appeared behind him and grabbed his neck. The man in blood-red clothes wanted to struggle, but he was shocked to find that he was like a doll in this large hand. It was impossible to resist. You, doppelganger? The man in blood-red clothes looked at the black-clothed Zhuowen in front of him and then looked at the white-clothed Zhuowen not far away. He immediately guessed that this black-clothed Zhuowen should be the doppelganger of Zhuowen's main body. Xianglan also noticed the situation here. However, she could not even deal with Zhuowen's main body now. So how could she care about the man in blood-red clothes? Where are the people from Suzhou City? Are all the people from Heavenly Spirit Star dead? No one escaped? The black-clothed Zhuowen asked coldly. The man in the blood-red robe, revealed a look of fear. He trembled as he said, "No, I didn't escape. However, I didn't do it. It was the Six Desires Palace who ordered me to do it. I was only following orders." Murderous intent surged in Zhuowen's eyes. He was not in the mood to continue listening to the man in crimson clothes. A black, devouring vortex appeared in his right palm, and the man in crimson clothes was completely devoured by the vortex. Then, the black-clothed man stood behind Xianglan to prevent her from escaping. Xianglan's beautiful eyes turned serious. She looked at Zhuowen and said, "Longwen, I underestimated you. How about this? If you let me go, I won't pursue the matter of you offending me." Zhuowen sneered. "Palace Master Xianglan, why should I let you go? Even if I let you go, will your Six Desire Palace let me go?" Xianglan's beautiful eyes sank, and she said, "Longwen, there's no enmity between you and Six Desires Palace, so there's no need for you to go against Six Desires Palace. So long as you let me go and hand Desireless over, then I'll definitely plead for mercy for you before Palace Master Wujue." Xianglan's words were quickly cut off by Zhuowen. "Palace Master Xianglan, do you know why I want to take Desireless away?" Zhuowen said with a gloomy gaze. Xianglan was taken aback. Actually, she was also confused about why Zhuowen wanted to take Desireless away. In her opinion, Zhuowen did not have any motive to take Desireless away. After all, Desireless was useless to other people, but he was extremely important to Six Desire Palace. Taking Desireless away was naturally standing against Six Desire Palace. Xianglan was also very confused. Longwen was only a loose cultivator, so why did he want to take Desireless away for no reason? That's because Desireless is the most important person to me. Back then, when your people from the Six Desires Palace took Desireless away, you all vowed to me that you would guarantee Desireless safety and provide him with a very good cultivation environment. But now I can only see that Desireless was forced by your Palace Master Wujue to cultivate the Desireless cultivation technique. And in the end, he became such a Desireless. Tell me, why should I take Desireless away? Zhuowen's gaze was surging with killing intent as he coldly said each word. Xianglan's beautiful face turned pale. Soon after, she calmly said, "It's your friend's honor to be able to become a Desireless. You should know that becoming a Desireless means that reaching the Tao realm won't be very difficult for her. In fact, it might even become very easy. This is your friend's fortune." Zhuowen was too lazy to pay attention to Xianglan's nonsense. He did not believe that Palace Master Wujue would be so kind as to allow Moyan Wushang to cultivate the Desireless cultivation technique. There was definitely a secret behind it. Moreover, from Xianglan's words, he could tell that Moyan Wushang did not do it willingly. Thinking of this possibility, the anger in Zhuowen's heart grew even more. Moyan Wushang had paid too much for him. In the past, his strength was too low, so he was unable to compensate Moyan Wushang. Originally, he thought that Moyan Wushang joining Six Desire Palace was a great fortune, but he never expected that Six Desire Palace would become her grave. Zhuowen no longer wanted to listen to Xianglan's explanation. He was ready to teach Six Desire Palace a lesson. Today, Xianglan must die here. Xianglan's beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent as she coldly said, "You still want to go against Six Desire Palace? Then don't blame me for being impolite." As she spoke, Xianglan flipped her lily-white hand, and a sparkling and translucent hexahedral ice crystal appeared in her palm. Xianglan waved her lily-white hand, and threw out the ice crystal. In an instant, the ice crystal turned into countless ice arrows. These ice arrows were not ordinary ice arrows, but ice arrows that contained a trace of the Heavenly Way's law. Its power was extremely terrifying. Zhuowen coldly snorted. His left hand grasped the void, and a strange purple intent appeared in his palm. The purple intent burst out and turned into rolling purple mist. In this rolling purple mist, dense purple crystals scattered. Bang! 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 The moment the ice arrows came into contact with the purple crystals, they all shattered. Then, countless purple crystals condensed into a terrifying purple spear that pierced through the air and charged towards Xianglan. Xianglan's pupils contracted. Her lily-white hand suddenly pressed forward. Countless ice crystals condensed and turned into an extremely thick ice wall, blocking in front of her. Unfortunately, the ice wall only lasted for a moment before it was penetrated by the terrifying purple spear. Uffed. Xianglan only felt a pain in her chest. She stared blankly at the purple spear in her chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. What kind of power is this? It's not the mysterious life divine energy at all, Xianglan said intermittently. Soon after, her entire body turned into a purple crystal. With a cracking sound, it shattered into countless powder. At this moment, the everlasting ice lotus was floating above Zhuowen's head. At this moment, the everlasting ice lotus was filled with purple intent. Zhuowen knew that the reason why he could kill Xianglan so easily was because of the Tao will. He relied on the powerful amplification of the Tao will and used it in the everlasting ice lotus, causing the mysterious life divine energy in the everlasting ice lotus to increase by 9 times in an instant. 9 times the mysterious life divine energy of the life enlightenment state could fight against an expert of the death enlightenment state. How could Xianglan resist it? After killing Xianglan, Zhuowen took out the space-time wheel. He sighed and looked at the heavenly spirit star, which had become a completely abandoned planet, and left this place. He had to leave the Six Desires heavenly realm now. Although he knew that the border of the Six Desires heavenly realm might be heavily guarded by the Six Desires palace, he still wanted to try. Chapter 2478. Steel continent at the border of the Six Desires heavenly domain was a huge black hole. A huge steel continent floated in front of the black hole. This continent should have been artificially created. Around the continent, there was a series of brilliant restriction formations. Moreover, it was precisely because of these restrictions that the steel continent was able to resist the terrifying suction force of the black hole. When Zhuowen changed his appearance and arrived at the periphery of the border, his face turned ugly. That black hole should be the exit of the border, and the only safe entrance to the black hole should be inside the steel continent. However, there were too many guards inside the steel continent. Zhuowen also found several ancient teleportation arrays inside. In addition, the surface of the steel continent was covered with level 8 arrays. Even if a level 9 array master came, it would take a lot of time to break the restrictions on the surface of the steel continent, let alone Zhuowen. Zhuowen was sure that as long as he entered the steel continent, he would be walking into a trap. Once he was discovered, he would not be able to escape. Moreover, Palace Master Wujue would definitely use the ancient teleportation array to teleport to the steel continent to deal with Zhuowen. Zhuowen sighed when he thought up to this point. He knew that it was impossible to leave the border without alerting the enemy. However, this was the only exit of the Six Desires heavenly domain. Zhuowen was not willing to give up. After thinking for a long time, Zhuowen finally decided to go in and give it a try. He believed that with the concealment of all life formless, ordinary cultivators would not be able to see his true appearance. At this moment, another group of people entered the steel continent from the outside world. Obviously, they were planning to go to other heavenly domains. These people had varying cultivation levels, but the weakest was at least at the void sky realm. Zhuowen mixed in with this group of people. His appearance and aura had already changed under the effect of all life formless, turning him into an ordinary middle-aged man. His cultivation level was about the third level of the Void Sky realm. Ancient Orchid Star River, within the flowing sand family, Kuang Li stood respectfully to the side. A dignified-looking Taoist priestess sat at the head of the hall. This Taoist priestess was naturally Wu Jue of Six Desires Palace. In a few seats around Wu Ju, the other 4 palace masters, except for Xianglan, were sitting. The hall was terrifyingly silent. Kuang Li did not dare to say a single word, but he was secretly sweating in his heart. He didn't expect all 6 palace masters of the Six Desires Palace to come to his Gulen galaxy. Speaking of which, all 6 palace masters were here for Zhuowen. After coming out of seclusion, Kuang Li already knew that Long One, who was wanted by Six Desires Palace, was Zhuowen, who had almost killed him. He was secretly shocked. Zhuowen had only left the Gulen family for a short while, but he had already offended the Six Desires Palace, which was a colossus, and even caused the 6 palace masters to take action. What exactly did this brat do to anger the heavens and the people? Suddenly, Wu Jue, who was sitting at the head of the table, stood up abruptly. Her beautiful face revealed a shocked expression. "Palace Master Wu Jue, what's wrong?" Palace Master Jing Yun asked. At this moment, Palace Master Jing Yun's heart was somewhat tangled. Her relationship with Zhuowen was the best. Back then, Zhuowen had saved her twice in the Divine Pill's secret realm. Now that Zhuowen had snatched Desireless and confronted Palace Master Wu Jue, how should she face Zhuowen? Xianglan has fallen. After Palace Master Wu Ju finished speaking with a murderous aura, she stepped into the void, and a ripple appeared. Then, she disappeared from where she stood. What? Xianglan has fallen? How is that possible? Let's go and take a look. The other palace masters were shocked and left the hall one after another. Only Palace Master Jing Yun remained. Palace Master Jing Yun frowned and muttered in a low voice, "Could Xianglan's fall be related to Zhuowen? This won't do. I have to go and take a look. I really didn't expect things to develop to this extent." After Palace Master Jing Yun left, Kuang Li sat on the ground. He secretly wiped his cold sweat and muttered in his heart, "I didn't expect the Palace Master of the Six Desires Palace, Xianglan, to fall. She was an almighty expert at the life enlightenment realm. Could it really be that Zhuowen who did it? That guy is definitely a ruthless person. I definitely can't provoke him in the future." Kuang Li muttered to himself as his whole body trembled. On the Steel Continent, Zhuowen mixed in with the crowd and passed through one checkpoint after another. On this continent, there were more than a dozen checkpoints set up. Each checkpoint had a restriction array to check whether the visitor was in disguise or had unknown origins. "This person has disguised himself. Take him down." Suddenly, a cold and emotionless voice came from behind Zhuowen. Soon after, Zhuowen discovered that a youth who had been following behind him was taken away by 2 cultivators from the Six Desires Palace. Zhuowen's heart relaxed. The strict inspection of the Steel Continent made even Zhuowen feel a chill in his heart. Although he had the all-life formless, he knew that he couldn't pass such a strict inspection. The main reason he could survive until now was that his spiritual sense was too strong, comparable to the 2 extremities of life and death. Such a powerful spiritual sense was simply invincible on the Steel Continent. Basically, no cultivator's spiritual sense could surpass Zhuowen's. In this series of inspections, Zhuowen basically relied on his powerful spiritual sense to fool his way through. Finally, they came to the last checkpoint. The checkpoint in front of them was a Xiao He house. Only one cultivator could enter at a time. According to the cultivator at the previous checkpoint, The cultivator who entered the Xiaohe house would be directly sent to the black hole entrance after passing the inspection, and leave the six desires' heavenly domain. When the cultivator in front of Zhuowen entered the Xiaohe house, Zhuowen casually extended his spiritual sense into the Xiaohe house. His gaze suddenly turned gloomy. He found that the cultivator in front of him was immediately killed by the trap and kill array inside the Xiaohe house. Moreover, this trap and kill array was extremely powerful. With Zhuowen's knowledge of array Dao, he speculated that this was definitely an 8th grade trap and kill array. Moreover, it wasn't just one 8th grade trap and kill array, but a combination of several 8th grade trap and kill arrays. Even if a cultivator in the life enlightenment realm entered this trap and kill array, it wouldn't be easy for them to escape. Zhuowen knew that the border of the six desires' heavenly domain didn't intend to let the cultivators leave at all. Instead, all of them were killed at this last checkpoint. It's your turn. A black-clothed guard at the entrance of the Xiaohe house glanced at Zhuowen expressionlessly and said indifferently. Zhuowen sneered. He clenched his right hand and took out the king's sword. Without hesitation, he slashed the black-clothed guard's neck and beheaded him. Whoosh, whoosh. The moment Zhuowen killed the guard, the people of the Six Desires Palace on the Steel Continent all rushed toward Zhuowen. Enemy attack. Someone killed the guards here. How dare he kill him immediately? Chapter 2479. Seal on the Steel Continent. The moment the powerful voice rang out, all the guards on the continent gathered together like a swarm of locusts. The other cultivators who had entered the continent for inspection were all pale and trembling. Kill all outsiders who enter the continent. That voice rang out once again. Then screams and sounds of fighting rang out from the continent. Zhuowen stood in front of Xiaohe's house. Black figures scurried around him. These were the guards of the Steel Continent. However, Zhuowen was surrounded by 4 divine weapons. They were the Thunderfire Sword, the Blood Fairy Sword, the Sky-Destroying Meteor, and the 9 Extinction Sword. With Zhuowen's current terrifying spiritual sense, controlling these 4 divine artifacts was more than enough. Furthermore, these 4 divine artifacts were wrapped tightly around Zhuowen. Any guard who tried to attack Zhuowen would be sent flying by the rebounding force, or have their divine souls obliterated by the powerful divine sense. In an instant, Zhuowen's surroundings became a sea of corpses. All the foreign cultivators on the Steel Continent were killed. In the end, only Zhuowen was left. Moreover, Zhuowen was surrounded by mountains and seas of corpses. It was a very strange scene. The remaining guards on the Steel Continent surrounded Zhuowen, but no one dared to step forward. After witnessing Zhuowen's terrifying strength, these guards were also scared witless. They knew that there was a huge gap between them and the white-clothed youth in front of them. Humph! A cold snort sounded, and then 5 figures rushed out from the depths of the Steel Continent. These 5 figures were all white-haired old men, and their auras were extremely vast. Zhuowen casually glanced around and discovered that these 5 were only half-step void Sky 9th Ascension cultivators, but he didn't care much about them. He had even killed a life enlightenment realm expert like Xianglan, the palace master of Fragrance Desire Palace. Naturally, he did not put a half-step void Sky 9th step cultivator in his eyes. Among the 5 old men, a blue-clothed old man walked in front. His eyes were cold as he stared at Zhuowen with extreme hostility. Who are you? Why did you kill the guards on the Steel Continent for no reason? Zhuowen sneered in his heart. These 5 old men did not immediately attack, but questioned him in advance. They probably knew that his strength was extraordinary. Of course, Zhuowen also knew that these 5 old men might have already informed Palace Master Wuju. They were just stalling for time. 5 old men. If you don't want to die, immediately open the border's exit. Zhuowen said coldly. Just now, he had already checked it out. The exit was indeed in Xiao Hei's divine runes. Even if he wanted to break through it, it would take a lot of time, and they were all grade rank 8 runes. Even if Zhuowen wanted to break through them, he would take a lot of time. And Zhuowen had. The exit is in Xiao Hei's house. As long as you go in, you will be able to leave the 6 desires heavenly realm. The blue-clothed old man said calmly. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. He stretched out his right hand into the void, and the surrounding space-time was suddenly affected. Immediately, the blue-clothed old man's neck tightened. Then, he was shocked to find that he was already in Zhuowen's hand without him knowing. Zhuowen was clearly standing in the same place, but he was able to hold the blue-clothed old man in his hand from 1,000 meters away. This was really too powerful. The power of time and space. The other 4 old men were shocked as they stared at Zhuo when in horror. Just now, the 4 of them did not notice Zhuowen's move at all. They only reacted when they knew that the blue-clothed old man was in Zhuowen's hand. Do you think I am a fool? You have set up several grade 8 runes in Xiao Hei's house. Do you think I am going to walk right into your trap? Zhuowen mocked. The blue-clothed old man rolled his eyes. He wanted to activate the divine power in his body, but he found that he was frozen by a terrifying power of time and space. At this moment, the blue-clothed old man's heart was filled with fear. He had never thought that one day he would be so close to death. Speak, or you will die. My patience is limited, Zhuowen said to the blue-clothed old man. The blue-clothed old man's body twitched, but he still did not say a word. If you don't want to speak, then don't blame me for being rude. Anyway, there are still 4 of us. One more won't make a difference. Zhuowen frowned. The power of time and space in his right hand suddenly invaded the blue-clothed old man's body. Then he threw him into the air, pulled out the king's sword, and slashed at the blue-clothed old man's heart. Uffed! The king's sword smoothly entered the blue-clothed old man's heart. The terrifying death chi invaded the blue-clothed old man's body and devoured all of his vitality. The blue-clothed old man fell to the ground and twitched violently. He wanted to struggle to get up, but he could not. The terrifying death chi quickly deprived him of his vitality. In the end, even the illusory heavenly bridge in his body was completely destroyed under the effect of the death chi. When the other 4 old men saw the blue-clothed old man die in such a painful manner, their hearts trembled. As for the many guards surrounding Zhuowen, they continuously retreated in fear. Obviously, they also knew that for an expert like Zhuowen, it was useless to rely on numbers to suppress him. Moreover, even the strongest blue-clothed old man of the Steel Continent was killed by this white-clothed young man. Their small fries would not even be enough to fill the gaps between his teeth if they rushed over. I said, my patience is limited. Release the formation restriction at the exit. Zhuowen looked at the 4 shocked old men with murderous intent in his eyes. The 4 old men looked at each other. Immediately, one of the old men said with a trembling voice, Sir, the trap and kill formation here was not set up by us. It was set up by Palace Master Wujua. Moreover, we do not know the method to open this trap and kill formation. Zhuowen frowned and grabbed the void with his right hand. The 4 old men were immediately pinched in his hand by his great divine power. Then the space-time power turned into ropes and restrained the movements of the 4 old men. After doing all this, Zhuowen's king's sword suddenly broke the Xiao Hei's house in front of him, revealing the layers of formation restriction inside. The restriction inside was extremely complicated, and one was linked to another. Looking at the hodgepodge of formation intertwined in front of him, Zhuowen sighed in his heart. He knew that it was not realistic to break the formation step by step. He could only destroy it with brute force. Zhuowen pointed at the void with his right hand. Suddenly, the space-time power transformed into an endless space-time ocean, and a waning sun rose at the end of the ocean. Zhuowen used the space-time power, the waning sun above the sea. The power of the waning sun descended, and the formation restriction in front of him began to be destroyed bit by bit. When the waning sun fell on the restriction according to Zhuowen's command, countless golden lights burst out. The formation restriction at the exit was annihilated, but Zhuowen's eyes were extremely gloomy, because the moment the formation restriction was annihilated, he found a 6-colored seal at the exit. Chapter 2480. Palace Master Zhan Wujue, that old hag, she actually left such a trump card at the exit. Zhuowen cursed in his heart. Immediately after, he took out the space-time wheel and planned to leave this place. He had spent too much time in this steel continent. Palace Master Zhan Wujue would probably rush over soon. Since the exit of the 6 Desires heavenly domain had been completely sealed, it would be too dangerous for Zhuowen to continue staying here. Therefore, he had to leave quickly. Unfortunately, the moment Zhuowen took out the space-time wheel, an ominous premonition arose in his mind. The moment this ominous premonition arose, Zhuowen immediately put away the space-time wheel. Immediately after, the torch dragon wings on his back spread open, and he moved several hundred meters to the side. Rumble! A terrifying energy pillar swept past Zhuowen's side, bringing about countless terrifying gales in the air. Zhuowen's gaze turned cold. If he had not reacted in time, this terrifying energy pillar would have caused him quite a bit of damage. Swoosh! Swoosh! The moment Zhuowen dodged the energy pillar, 4 figures appeared behind Zhuowen, completely blocking his path of retreat. These 4 figures were not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. They were the Palace Master of Desire Palace, Jing Yun, Palace Master of Desire Palace, Hua Ting, Palace Master of Desire Palace, and Palace Master of Desire Palace. In front of Zhuowen, Palace Master Zhan Wujue, who was dressed in a white Taoist robe, slowly walked over. Longwen, do you think that this Palace Master can't recognize you after changing your appearance? Stop pretending to be mysterious. Hand over Desireless. On account of Jingyun, I will spare your life. Palace Master Zhan Wujue stopped several hundred meters in front of Zhuowen. Her clear and cold voice slowly sounded. Longwen, listen to Palace Master Zhan Wujue. Hand over Desireless. Desireless is useless to you. What's the use of snatching him? Palace Master Jing Yun persuaded from the side. However, Zhuowen sneered and said, Palace Lord Jing Yun, many thanks for your kind intentions. However, I will definitely not hand over Desireless. At this point, Zhuowen stared coldly at Palace Master Wujue and said, Palace Master Wujue, do you know the name Moyan Wushang? Palace Master Wujue's eyes narrowed. She shook her head and said, I have never heard of Moyan Wushang. I am questioning you now. What right do you have to question me? Zhuowen ignored Palace Master Wujue and continued, Wushang came from the abandoned Heavenly Armor planet. Later on, he relied on his own efforts to protect many cultivators in the Heavenly Armor planet. Until one day, a mysterious black-clothed woman appeared. She said that she wanted to take Wushang away. She also said that she could let Wushang enter the 6 Desires Palace and give him the best cultivation environment and resources. I believed in the prestige and integrity of the 6 Desires Palace. Therefore, I let Wushang go with her. At this point, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with killing intent. He continued, At that time, I said that I would make a trip to the 6 Desires Palace to see Wushang again. However, I did not see him in the 6 Desires Palace. In fact, there was no trace of Wushang. It was only when I heard the song, A Phoenix Courting a Phoenix, that I knew that Wushang had stayed in the Six Desires Palace. However, he had disappeared. Later on, I discovered that Wushang had become desireless. He was a puppet who had abandoned his 7 emotions and 6 desires. At this point, Zhuowen's killing intent reached its peak. He stared at Palace Master Wuju. Now, Zhuowen was 100% sure that Palace Master Wuju was the mysterious black-clothed, masked woman. The reason why Palace Master Wuju could not recognize Zhuowen was that she did not take Zhuowen seriously back then. She did not have a deep impression of Zhuowen. Secondly, Zhuowen had changed his appearance and name before coming to the Six Desires Palace. Although Palace Master Wuju could tell that Zhuowen had changed his appearance at a glance, she did not expose Zhuowen because he was brought here by Palace Master Jingyun. You're that puny, heavenly god called Zhuowen from back then? Palace Master Wuju's beautiful eyes were filled with surprise as she looked at Zhuowen. The mysterious woman back then was indeed her. At that time, she had been looking for the most suitable person to cultivate the desireless cultivation method in the 8 heavens. Then, she unintentionally took a fancy to Moyen Wushang. At that time, she had promised Moyen Wushang many conditions and benefits. However, Moyen Wushang was not moved. Later on, Moyen Wushang changed his decision because of a little late divine realm youth. In the end, he followed her and left. Back then, she still had some impression of Zhuowen, who was only a divine realm expert. However, after so many years, she gradually forgot about him. Now that Zhuowen had taken the initiative to mention him, Palace Master Wuju immediately thought of Zhuowen. Of course, Palace Master Wuju was most surprised by Zhuowen's current cultivation. It had only been a few hundred years since she took Moyen Wushang away. In such a short period of time, the divine realm youth back then had actually advanced to the void sky 8 steps. Moreover, the strength of the white-clothed youth before her had far exceeded his cultivation realm. The expressions of the other 4 palace masters also changed. They all knew that Desireless had only appeared a few hundred years ago. According to Palace Master Wuju, the white-clothed youth before them was only a divine realm expert a few hundred years ago. However, after a few hundred years, he had actually advanced to the void sky 8 steps. His cultivation speed was a bit too terrifying. Among them, the one with the most complicated expression was none other than Palace Master Jingyun. Although she knew that Zhuowen was monstrous, she did not expect him to be this monstrous. Is Xianglan's death related to you? Palace Master Wuju's killing intent suddenly rose. The moment she found out about Zhuowen's identity, Palace Master Wuju already had the intention to kill him. Although she did not think that Zhuowen could kill Xianglan, she knew that Xianglan's death was definitely related to Zhuowen. Perhaps there was an even more powerful existence behind Zhuowen. I was the one who killed the palace master of the Fragrance Desire Palace. She provoked me. How can I not kill her? Zhuowen sneered. You're courting death. Palace Master Wuju took a step forward and rushed toward Zhuowen. The horsetail whisk in her hand turned into boundless white waves and instantly entangled Zhuowen. The other 4 palace masters surrounded him to prevent Zhuowen from escaping. Waning son of the sea. Within the countless white waves, a cold voice rang out. Soon after, a waning sun rose and scattered the white waves. Zhuowen stepped on the sea of time and space and walked toward Palace Master Wuju. He was very clear that there was still a big gap between him and an expert of the life and death realm. However, today he had learned that Palace Master Wuju was the mysterious woman who had taken Wushang away. Moreover, after Palace Master Wuju brought Wushang back, not only did she not fulfill her promise, she even forced Wushang to cultivate the desireless cultivation technique and forcibly deprived him of his 6 desires. Thinking of this, Zhuowen was unable to control the fury in his heart. Moreover, Zhuowen wanted to know how big the gap was between him and an expert of the life and death realm. He still had the blood jade that the mysterious head had left for him. Chapter 2481. Shueyu, Space-Time Divine Power. Seems like you do have some skills. Palace Master Wujue sneered, but she didn't take Zhuowen's space-time divine power seriously. Palace Master Wujue swung her horsetail whisk, and instantly there were over a dozen gusts of black wind. The black wind was extremely powerful. Once it came into contact with flesh and blood, it could immediately take away vitality and turn the flesh and blood into dry bones. Over a dozen gusts of black wind whizzed out and instantly entangled the sun that had risen to the highest point. Then, the terrifying sun was completely devoured by the black wind. Even the surrounding space-time instantly dried up. Zhuowen's pupils contracted as he looked at the gusts of black wind. He didn't expect the black wind to be so terrifying. His space-time divine power had collapsed in front of the black wind. The space-time divine power was broken, and the gusts of black wind were like black pythons that pounced on Zhuowen from all directions. Zhuowen's eyes grew gloomy, and he took out the boundless ice lotus. At the same time, he released the 9 Tao meanings without hesitation. Suddenly, the boundless ice lotus was dyed purple. At the same time, the purple lotus expanded to a size of 100 feet and slowly bloomed above Zhuowen's head. Under the influence of the Tao meanings, the powerful mysterious life divine power increased by almost 9 times. It circled around Zhuowen and formed an indestructible defense. Boom, boom, boom. Over a dozen gusts of black wind swept over continuously and hit the strong defense on the surface of the boundless ice lotus. When the rumbling gradually subsided, Palace Master Wujue squinted her beautiful eyes and realized that Zhuowen was safe and sound. A purple lotus floated above Zhuowen's head and protected Zhuowen from the attack of the black wind. This man blocked Palace Master Wujue's attack. This guy is crazy. The other 4 Palace Masters were shocked, and they looked at the young man in white, who was safe and sound, in disbelief. Zhuowen spat out some blood, and his heart was filled with bitterness. In order to block Palace Master Wujue's attack, he could be said to have used all his skills. Even so, he still suffered a serious internal injury. Moreover, the defensive energy in the surroundings of the infinite ice lotus was already thinned to the point it was practically non-existent at this moment. If it wasn't for the energy of the Tao insight supporting it bitterly, Zhuowen wouldn't be able to stand stably at this moment. The 2 extremes of life and death are indeed too terrifying. It's definitely not something that I can contend against. Zhuowen smiled bitterly as he muttered to himself. Then he took out the space-time wheel again. He had to leave this place. Otherwise, he would definitely die. You want to leave? Is it that easy? Palace Master Wujue's gaze turned even colder. She could feel Zhuowen's terrifying talent. If this boy was allowed to continue developing, wouldn't his strength catch up to hers very quickly? She would never let such a thing happen. To cut the grass, one had to dig up the roots. She had to get rid of this root completely. Palace Master Wujue waved her horsetail whisk again. Instantly, close to 100 gusts of black wind whizzed out and blocked in front of Zhuowen. They almost formed an extremely terrifying black wall. Zhuowen, you shall die here. Palace Master Wujue snorted coldly. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the void. Suddenly, a huge mouth appeared on the black wall and swallowed Zhuowen. Other than Palace Master Jingyun, the other 3 Palace Masters heaved a sigh of relief and landed beside Palace Master Wujue. Zhuowen is really cunning. He actually changed his name to Longwen from the beginning. Moreover, I heard that Zhuowen once obtained the life and death elixir in the Divine Pill's secret land. Many people have been discussing this matter previously. Palace Master Wu Jue glanced at Palace Master Jing Yun, who was silent beside her, and chuckled. If this boy hadn't exposed his identity, perhaps I wouldn't have killed him. Unfortunately, he's courting death, Palace Master Wu Jue said coldly. With Palace Master Wu Jue's status, she would rarely lower herself to attack a member of the younger generation. However, this time it involved Desireless. Thus, Palace Master Wu Jue would not sit by and watch. Also, Jing Yun, don't bring just anyone back to the Six Desires Palace in the future. This is a lesson for you. Palace Master Wu Jue looked at Jing Yun, who was not far away, and reprimanded her solemnly. Palace Master Jing Yun nodded and bowed. Even though she knew, she still didn't say anything. Oh, that's right, Palace Master Wu Jue. Since your black winds are so powerful, would they be able to eliminate the desireless in this boy's body? Palace Master Wu Jue asked. Palace Master Wu Jue smiled and said, "Don't worry about that. This black wind only targets the depths of one's soul. Furthermore, it must come into contact with the surface of one's body before it can enter the depths of one's soul. As long as this Zhuowen doesn't release desireless, nothing will happen to him." Hearing those words, the other palace masters all felt relieved. Desireless was related to whether or not their Six Desires Palace would be able to produce another Dao verification expert in the future. Thus, they naturally didn't wish for anything to happen to Desireless. Rumble! Suddenly, the huge black wall formed by nearly 100 strands of black wind was annihilated in an instant. An earth-shaking bloody light filled the entire starry sky. Palace Master Wu Jue and the others were all alarmed by the frightening crimson light. They all looked toward the crimson light. A white-clothed youth slowly walked out from the depths of the crimson light where the countless black winds were destroyed. At this moment, the white-clothed youth's body was completely dyed crimson by the crimson light. That crimson light was being emitted from his right palm. If one were to look carefully, one would be able to see that the youth was holding a crimson jade in his palm. The energy emitted from that crimson jade was extremely frightening. Even Palace Master Wu Jue was shocked by it. At this moment, Zhuowen's complexion was deathly pale. In his heart, he was cursing that mysterious head for tricking him. The instant he was engulfed by the black winds, he immediately activated the crimson jade. Moreover, the might of the crimson jade did not disappoint him. It directly broke through the black wall formed by the black winds. However, what made Zhuowen feel helpless was that the power of the crimson jade was converted by absorbing the blood essence in his body. Earlier, when the crimson jade broke through the black winds, it absorbed a lot of his blood essence. Even Zhuowen was unable to endure it. "I have to leave immediately. I can't continue to be entangled with Palace Master Wu Jue." Zhuowen muttered to himself. Then he stepped onto the space-time wheel and immediately disappeared from where he stood. Palace Master Wu Jue and the others had already recovered from their shock. When they saw that Zhuowen had actually escaped, Palace Master Wu Jue's expression turned ugly. She also took out a flight divine equipment and chased after Zhuowen. Damn it! What kind of flight divine equipment is that Palace Master Wu Jue using? Why is it so fast? When Zhuowen discovered that Palace Master Wu Jue and the others were chasing after him, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. He couldn't help but activate the space-time wheel to increase its speed. Rumble! Just as Zhuowen increased his speed, a gust of black wind whistled over and tried to engulf Zhuowen. Zhuowen immediately took out the crimson jade. With the power of the crimson jade, he easily blocked the black wind. However, Zhuowen's heart felt even more bitter. He clearly knew that every time he used the Crimson Jade, his blood essence would be absorbed by the Crimson Jade. It was a kind of equivalent exchange. If Palace Master Wujue continued to attack him from behind, he couldn't imagine how he could endure until he entered the Door of Profundity. Chapter 2482. Discovering the Door of Profundity in the starry sky, two streaks of flowing light flashed past. Palace Master Wujue frowned as she looked at Zhuowen, who was desperately controlling the space-time wheel. She then said, "Could his flying divine weapon be the space-time disc?" "It shouldn't be the space-time disc. The real space-time disc was shattered in the space-time quicksand river. This should be the core component of the space-time disc. Although its speed isn't as fast as the space-time disc, it shouldn't be underestimated," Palace Master Hua Ting said. Palace Master Wujue nodded and said, "Follow me to attack Zhuowen. The blood jade on him is extraordinary and powerful. However, there is a corresponding price to pay." Palace Master Wujue's eyesight was indeed amazing. In the process of chasing, she quickly noticed that something was wrong with Zhuowen. Although the power released by the strange blood jade in Zhuowen's hand contained extremely powerful rules of heaven that were even stronger than her divine power of life and death. However, Palace Master Wujue could see that after Zhuowen used the blood jade to block her attacks, he gradually became weaker. Obviously, if he wanted to borrow the power of the blood jade, he would have to pay a corresponding price. Boom, boom, boom. Under Palace Master Wujue's command, the other 4 Palace Masters used their own methods to attack Zhuowen. The 5 attacks turned into 5 rainbow-like energy pillars that enveloped Zhuowen and the space-time wheel. Uffed! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and he became extremely weak. The 5 attacks were too terrifying. Palace Master Wujue's attack alone was already difficult for him to block. Now, with the other 4 Palace Masters' joint attack, Zhuowen almost couldn't take it. Fortunately, the blood jade was indeed powerful. Although it was terrifying to absorb his blood essence, Zhuowen had too many divine medicines and divine elixirs. Among them, there was no lack of blood essence recovery elixirs. Therefore, although his face was getting paler, he could still hold on for a while. "We're about to reach the north. I just need to enter the Door of Profundity," Zhuowen muttered to himself. Logically speaking, only cultivators who had comprehended Tao intent were qualified to enter the Door of Profundity. Or rather, only Su descendants who had comprehended Tao intent could enter. The reason why Zhuowen was Wujue Studio Zhuowen, studio time. Previously, when Zhuowen was in Suzhou City, the Su family's Su Yi gave the purple jade to him. If of Profundity Studio, or if he lacked both Tao intent studio, his Profundity is his realm. Moreover, this gate of Profundity is connected to the 9th heaven. Zhuowen concluded that this gate of Profundity is by no means an ordinary object. The 2 extremes of life and death shouldn't be able to break through its defense. Is Su Studio? Is a studio realm art of heaven? Is again, just as Zhuowen was pondering, Palace Master Wujue and the others joined forces to attack again. Zhuowen could not help but curse. The joint attack of Palace Master Wujue and the others almost knocked Zhuowen unconscious. Now that it was happening again, Zhuowen was a little scared. He could only pick up the blood jade forcefully and borrow the power of the blood jade to defend against the terrifying joint attack. Zhuowen spat out another mouthful of blood and swallowed all the divine pills and herbs on his body without any regard for his life. Then, he desperately drove the space-time void to escape. Not long after, Zhuowen had already entered the vicinity of Heavenly Spirit Star, which was located in the northern part of the 6 Desires heavenly domain. He had already been struck 3 or 4 times by the 5 great palace lords, and each time he was struck, he kept coughing up blood. If Zhuowen didn't have an abundance of divine pills on him, Zhuowen wouldn't have been able to hold on. But even so, Zhuowen's internal injuries had become even more serious than before. This kind of internal injury could not be healed by swallowing divine pills and miraculous medicines. Instead, it required time to slowly heal. Puqi, after Zhuowen took another hit, he directly rushed towards the northern part of Heavenly Spirit Star. His speed was extremely fast. Why is this Zhuowen here? The northern part of the Heaven Realm is the most remote place, and there is no exit to the Heaven Realm here. If you continue to head north, you will only enter a dead end in the Heaven Realm. That is simply a dead end. The Palace Master of the Listening Palace said doubtfully, "Continue to chase. This kid is full of tricks. We can't let our guard down." The killing intent in Palace Master Wu Jue's eyes became even more intense. The 5 great Palace Masters had chased for almost half of the heavenly domain and spent a few days, but they still couldn't catch up to this junior, who was only at 8 steps void sky. If this matter was spread out, they would probably become the joke of the 8 heavenly domains. Soon, Palace Master Wu Jue and the others followed Zhuowen into the depths of the northern part of the heavenly domain. Then, they saw Zhuowen enter the interior of an asteroid belt. Their consciousness spread out and discovered that there was a dying star in the center of the asteroid belt. Zhuowen didn't hesitate to enter the star's interior. When their consciousness entered the star's interior and reached the star's core, they were immediately pushed back by a purple energy. What's going on? There's an unusual energy in that star, Palace Master Wu Jue said with a cold gaze. The other 4 Palace Masters all looked bewildered. Just now, when the purple light hit their divine senses, it made them feel as if their necks were being strangled. This feeling made them very uncomfortable. It was as if they would be killed by this energy at any time. Let's go in and take a look. After Palace Master Wu Jue finished speaking, she kept her flying divine tool and entered the asteroid belt first. The other 4 Palace Masters looked at each other and followed Palace Master Wu Jue in. After a while, the 5 great Palace Masters went deep into the star and reached the star's core. This kid entered the star's core. Palace Master Wu Jue pointed at a pothole in front of the star's core. This pothole could fit a person. Just now, their consciousness was forcefully cut off by the energy inside the star's core. Therefore, the 5 of them didn't rashly extend their consciousness into the star's core. What's this kid doing? Palace Master Wu Jue frowned and said, "Let's go in and take a look." Palace Master Wu Jue said in a deep voice, Don't use your consciousness anymore. This place is very strange. Consciousness can easily be devoured." Palace Master Wu Jue reminded and went into the pothole. The 5 of them quickly entered the star's core. Then they saw a huge stone door inside. The stone door was 3 feet tall, and its surface was covered with purple veins. An ancient and vicissitude aura was spontaneously emitted from the stone door. There's actually a door here. The door's surface has an extremely mysterious energy. Palace Master Wu Jue came in front of the door. Out of curiosity, she extended her hand and placed it on the surface of the stone door. Boom. Chapter 2483. Surging starry sky energy. The Palace Master of the Palace of Desire was caught off guard and was hit by the terrifying purple energy. She spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Fortunately, Palace Master Wu Jue noticed that something was wrong and stopped the Palace Master of the Palace of Desire. At the same time, she took out a divine pill from her spiritual ring and fed it to the Palace Master of the Palace of Desire. "Thank you, Palace Master Wu Jue." The Palace Master of the Palace of Desire swallowed the divine pill and recovered a little. She quickly thanked Palace Master Wu Jue. Palace Master Wu Jue shook her head and looked at the stone door in front of her. seriously. She said, "This stone door is not simple. I seem to have seen this energy somewhere before. I remember that the heaven-breaking origin of the Huaxia Qing domain is similar to this stone door. Could it be the Huaxia Qing domain's doing?" The palace master of the Palace of Desire quickly answered. Palace Master Wujue shook her head and said, "It shouldn't be. If the ruler of the Huaxia Qing domain, Tai Qing, had come to the Qing domain, I would have known about it. Moreover, he wouldn't have placed such a terrifying stone door in front of me." Palace Master Wujue's eyes became serious. She could feel that the energy contained within the stone door was even more terrifying than the heaven-breaking origin spring white snow that she had mastered. Palace Master Wujue, who had come into contact with the heaven-breaking origin, was all too familiar with the origin energy contained within the stone door. This origin source definitely surpassed any origin source in the 8 heavens. Perhaps only when all 8 origin sources were fused together would they be able to match the power of this stone door. Palace Master Wujue's eyes were burning with passion. Although she wasn't sure about the origin of the stone door, she knew that it wasn't simple. "Let's work together to break this stone door," Palace Master Wujue ordered. The other 4 palace masters didn't dare to delay, and they all used their own techniques. In an instant, 5 terrifying attacks landed on the stone door. Colorful energy ripples splashed out. However, Palace Master Wujue and the other 4 quickly realized that the stone door didn't move under their combined attacks. "What is this thing? Our attacks have no effect on it," the Palace Master of the Palace of Desire said in shock. Again, Palace Master Wujue's face was gloomy as she joined the other palace masters to attack the stone door again. After a few rounds of attacks, the Stone Palace Master Wujue editor, Vermilion Palace Master Wujue, finally, the 5 of them gave up. Then Zhuowen should have entered this stone door. How did he open this stone door? Painting asked in surprise. Palace Master of the Palace Master Wujue looked at Palace Master Wujue. Zhuowen was Wujue, 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 Wuwuju, Wujue, Wuwuju, Wui Wujue of the Wujue of Wuwuju, Wuwuju, Wujue, Wuwuju off. Wujue by Wuwuju, Wuwu, Wuwuju, Wujue, Wujue. Wujue, Wujue, Wuwuju. Was Zhu Wu was Zhu was Wujue this time. In order to escape from the pursuit of Palace Master Wujue and the others, he had paid a great deal of blood essence and even suffered internal injuries in order to obtain the Door of Profundity. Of course, if it wasn't for this Door of Profundity, Zhuowen felt that he would have no path to heaven and no door to hell. That mysterious head isn't reliable at all. It didn't even tell me that the blood jade has such a huge side effect. Zhuowen couldn't help but curse at the mysterious head that gave him the blood jade when he thought of his sorry state. If the mysterious head heard this, it would definitely spit out a mouthful of blood. When this blood jade was activated, it was enough to destroy those in the life-comprehending realm, defeat those in the death-comprehending realm, and block those in the life and death realm. Back then, Zhuowen's strength was not high. The mysterious head did not think that Zhuowen could provoke experts at the life and death extremities. Cultivators below the life and death extremities would not cause too much damage to Zhuowen, who had the blood jade. Who would have thought that Zhuowen would provoke the 2 extremes of life and death and 4 life-comprehending realm experts to hunt him down? Otherwise, Zhuowen would not be in such a sorry state. After resting for 4 to 6 hours, Zhuowen finally caught his breath, and the rumbling behind him gradually stopped. Zhuowen knew that even if Palace Master Wu Ju and the other 4 joined forces, it would still be difficult for them to break through the Door of Profundity, so he was relieved. However, Zhuowen felt a little helpless. Originally, the Door of Profundity was extremely hidden, but now it was exposed to Palace Master Wu Ju because of him. As long as Palace Master Wu Ju was not a short-sighted person, he would definitely be able to see the extraordinariness of the door of profundity. Thinking of this, Zhuowen felt a little helpless, although he didn't know the origin of the door of profundity. Since this door of profundity led to the ninth heaven, it was definitely not something simple. Originally, he planned to slowly comprehend the door of profundity, but he didn't expect to be forced into it by Palace Master Wu Ju as soon as he discovered it. Fortunately, the method to enter and exit the door of profundity was in Zhuowen's hands, so Palace Master Wu Ju had no other way to enter except for attacking. How great would it be if I could refine this door of profundity? Zhuowen muttered in a low voice, but his eyes lit up. Although he didn't know the origin of the door of profundity, he knew that this door of profundity should be extraordinary. If he could refine this door of profundity, then he would be able to take it away. But soon, Zhuowen was disappointed. The door of profundity was too mysterious, and he didn't know how to refine it. So he didn't know where to start. Sai, let's not talk about this for now. Let's heal first. Also, I have to let my clone advance as soon as possible. Zhuowen stood up with difficulty and stepped into the purple mist in front of him. After a short while, he arrived at the edge of the transparent barrier that he came from before. Zhuowen first set up a spirit gathering array at the barrier. This spirit gathering array was able to gather all the surrounding starry sky energy into this array. Cultivators who entered the spirit gathering array would be able to absorb the energy and cultivate. There was no starry sky energy in the door of profundity, only the power of Tao intent. The purpose of Zhuowen setting up the spirit gathering array was naturally to gather the starry sky energy of the ninth heaven outside the barrier. The last time he came to this barrier, he curiously stretched his right hand out of the barrier and felt that the starry sky energy in the ninth heaven was extremely rich, much richer than the starry sky of the eight heavens. If the starry sky where the eight heavens are located is a small stream, then in Zhuowen's view, the ninth heaven on the other side of the barrier is a river or even a vast ocean. The starry sky energy of the two is not on the same level at all. Chapter 2484. Sakyamuni, after Zhuowen summoned the black-clothed Zhuowen, he took out a large number of calamity crystal veins from his spirit ring. In the past, he obtained a large number of calamity crystal veins in the cloudy clear round crescent, which was enough for the black-clothed Zhuowen to pass 19 wind disasters. It's just that in the past few years, the black-clothed Zhuowen's cultivation speed has been relatively slow due to fear of wind disasters. Now that he has the pill fire, he naturally has no scruples. If the black-clothed Zhuowen goes all out, Zhuowen estimates that the black-clothed Zhuowen will be able to pass 19 wind disasters in 10 years. After settling the black-clothed Zhuowen, Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the spirit-gathering formation. Waves of rich starry sky energy poured into Zhuowen's body like a tide, spreading along his 8 extraordinary meridians. An indescribable feeling of comfort made Zhuo when unable to help but cry out in pleasure. He hasn't felt this carefree for a long time. Moreover, he found that the heavenly Tao in the starry sky energy of the ninth heaven is extremely complete, much more complete than the eight heavens. Thinking of what Palace Master Jingyun said at the beginning, that there are many cultivators in the ninth heaven who have reached the ninth heaven, Zhuowen believed it a little. In such a complete environment, as long as one has good talent and works hard, there is still a great chance to comprehend the heavenly Tao and advance to the ninth heaven. With such a good cultivation environment, Zhuowen naturally won't let it go easily. As long as he can break through to the life enlightenment realm here, coupled with the power of his ninefold Tao intent, Zhuowen knows that he doesn't need to be afraid of Palace Master Wu Jue. Although his strength may not be the opponent of Palace Master Wu Jue at that time, Palace Master Wu Jue will have to think twice if he wants to kill him. Moreover, Zhuowen's ultimate trump card, the Tao slaughtering hegemonic technique can also be cultivated at that time. Once he succeeds, he won't be afraid of Palace Master Wujue at all. Of course, whether or not he could advance to the life-comprehending realm was still debatable. After all, the 9 steps of the virtual sky world was the highest realm in the virtual sky world. It wasn't something he could achieve just by thinking about it. Time ticked by, and Zhuowen stayed here for 10 years. During these 10 years, other than taking care of Desireless, Zhuowen had been diligently cultivating within the spirit-gathering array. Ever since Desireless was injured by Old Lord Tusida, he had been unconscious the entire time. Furthermore, Zhuowen felt that Palace Master Wujue had something that could be used against Desireless. Once he was able to leave this place, he would first make a trip to Huaxia Heaven region. He had to first restore Desireless' 6 desires. Perhaps he would be able to wake Desireless up at that time. At this moment, there were 6 figures standing outside the stone gate. Zhuowen was familiar with 3 of them. They were Yemo Zi, Elder Tusida, and Palace Master Wujue, whom he had fought 10 years ago in the 6 Desires Palace. As for the other 3 people, they were unfamiliar faces. However, the auras on their bodies contained the powerful auras of the cycle of life and death. They should be absolute powerhouses of the 2 extremes of life and death. Among the 3 unfamiliar people, one of them had the strongest aura among the 6. This person stood in front of the 6 people. There was a golden vertical bar between his eyebrows, as if there was a golden eye between his eyebrows. The other 5 people looked at this figure with fear in their eyes. Although they were all in the 2 extremes of life and death, the aura on this man with the golden vertical bar was much more terrifying and powerful than that of the other 5 people present. Sakyamuni, I didn't expect you to also come. A white-haired, lazy young man said in a deep voice as he looked at the man with the golden vertical bar with some fear. If Zhuowen was standing here, he would definitely be able to recognize this man with the golden vertical bar as Sakyamuni, who had used Heavenly Armor Planet as a wager back then. Although he had only seen Sakyamuni's projection back then, he would never forget the domineering aura on Sakyamuni's body. Sakyamuni looked at the purple patterns on the stone door in front of him and frowned. Isn't this power Tai Ching's Tao intent? But it's even stronger than Tai Ching's Tao intent. Tai Ching hasn't come yet? As he said that, Sakyamuni looked at Palace Master Wujue. This time, Palace Master Wujue had summoned the other 7 heaven lords to the door of profundity. Now, Sakyamuni domains Sakyamuni, Mahesvara domains Unfettered One, Yemo domains Yemo domains Yemo domain, Tusida domains Old Lord Tusida domain, and Limitless Light domains Wu Liang domain were all present. However, Mahesvara domains Mahesvara and Huaxia domains Tai Ching were not present. Palace Master Wujue smiled bitterly. Mahesvara has never interacted with the other heavens, so he refused. Tai Ching said he didn't have time, so he didn't come either. Sakura coldly snorted and said, "That trash of the great Brahma domain is stuck in his own place all day long, selfish and self-centered. If it weren't for the fact that the great Brahma domain is the place with the thinnest energy among the 8 heavens, I would have killed that trash and snatched the great Brahma domain. But why doesn't Tai Ching have time? Didn't you tell him about the situation here?" Palace Master Wujue said, "I've already told him. I even said that this place might have something to do with his Tao intent, but Tai Ching said he wasn't interested, so he didn't come." Sakyamuni frowned. Since Tai Ching had already said so, Sakyamuni had nothing to say. Clearly, Tai Ching had made up his mind not to come. "The 3 of you couldn't open this stone door when you worked together?" Sakyamuni turned his head, looked at Palace Master Wujue, Old Lord Tusida, and Yemozi, and asked in a deep voice. Old Lord Tusida nodded and said, "Yes, This stone door is extraordinarily hard. The three of us even used our respective heaven-breaking sources, but we still couldn't open it. Could it be that this stone door is a heaven-breaking divine artifact? Sakyamuni sneered and said, "Do you still believe that what you have is the heaven-breaking sources? After being the lords of heavens for so many years, you should have realized that the heaven-breaking sources are simply a lie. We are just frogs at the bottom of the well. What we have is not the heaven-breaking sources at all. At most, it can only be regarded as the heavenly Tao origin, and an extremely incomplete one at that. I'm afraid that there should be a lot of heavenly Tao origin in the ninth heaven." Sakyamuni mocked. The other five fell silent. After becoming the lords of heavens, they have been studying the heavenly Tao origin of their respective heavens. Indeed, they found that the heavenly Tao origin wasn't as powerful and terrifying as they imagined. If it was really the heaven-breaking sources, even if it was just a trace, it would be enough to break the heavenly Tao and break free from the shackles of the eight heavens, but they didn't have it. "Then what do you think this stone door is?" Palace Master Wujua asked. "I don't know, but I know that this stone door shouldn't be a divine artifact. It's more like a sealed door. As for what it is, we can only talk about it after we open it. The six of us will take out our respective heavenly Tao origin and work together to open the stone door." After Sakyamuni finished speaking, the golden vertical strip between his eyebrows suddenly split open, and an ancient and terrifying power emerged from it. Everyone knew that this was Sakyamuni's heavenly Tao origin. It was the most powerful heavenly Tao origin among the eight heavens. Chapter 2485. Bang on the stone gate. After Sakyamuni used the heavenly domain sources, the other five heavenly lords no longer held back and summoned their respective heavenly domain sources. 6 types of terrifying heavenly domain sources bombarded the stone gate one after another. Palace Master Wujua was pleasantly surprised to find that the stone gate, which had remained motionless for the past 10 years, began to tremble slightly under the joint attack of the 6 types of heavenly domain sources. The power of the heavenly domain sources is really effective. The stone gate has begun to tremble violently. Old Lord Tusada also showed a look of joy. The trembling of the stone gate became more and more violent. The power of the 6 heavenly domain sources is too great. Under the influence of this terrifying power, the star covering the stone gate was completely shattered, exposing the 10-meter-tall stone gate. Inside the stone gate, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He sighed softly and said, "The starry sky energy of the 9th heaven is indeed rich. In just 10 years, I improved from the initial stage of the 8th step to the peak of the 8th step, but the time is too short. I almost reached the half-step, 9th step." Speaking of this, Zhuowen glanced at the black-clothed Zhuowen not far away. At this moment, the aura exuding from the black-clothed Zhuowen is extremely powerful and terrifying. It's many times stronger than 10 years ago. Zhuowen showed a satisfied look. The black-clothed Zhuowen has already survived 18 wind disasters, and the 19th wind disaster is about to arrive. He knows that as long as his avatar survives the 19th wind disaster, he will be able to activate the mark placed on him by Lord Brahma. At that time, he will be directly teleported back to the Tower of Hanno. Lord Brahma's cultivation base is only around the life enlightenment realm. The current Zhuowen really doesn't put him in his eyes. However, what he is afraid of is the heavenly domain sources controlled by Lord Brahma. Although great Brahma's cultivation wasn't high, since he was able to become the ruler of a heaven region, and the fact that the great Brahma heaven domain was able to survive until now, despite being in such a backward state, there had to be something unique about him. Therefore, although Zhuowen was no longer afraid of great Brahma, he did not let down his guard because of this. After all, to be able to become the ruler of the heavenly region, none of them were simple. Moreover, if Zhuowen returned to the great Brahma domain this time, he was prepared to make another trip to the blood-stained cliff. He planned to retrieve the eyes and heart of that Tao-confirming expert. He had the aura of that mysterious head, so he knew that taking back the eyes and heart of that Tao-confirming expert should not be too much of an obstacle. Moreover, he believed that there would definitely be other good things in the blood-stained cliff. After all, he had originally planned to enter the blood-stained cliff again. Just as Zhuowen was letting his imagination run wild, the space inside the stone door began to shake violently. Zhuowen could not help but stagger, almost falling down. What happened? Zhuowen's eyes were filled with bewilderment. Soon after, a terrifyingly powerful divine sense quietly extended to the stone door. Then, he gloomily discovered that there were actually 6 experts outside the stone door constantly bombarding it. Among the 6, Zhuowen naturally knew Palace Master Wujue, Yamazi, and Old Lord Tusada. However, he did not know the other 3 at all. However, among the 6, one of them caught Zhuowen's attention. This person had a golden vertical bar between his eyebrows. His aura was the strongest among the 6, which made Zhuowen extremely wary. Moreover, after feeling the domineering aura from this person, Zhuowen could not help but think of a person in his mind, and that was Sakyamuni. Back then, the aura of Sakyamuni's illusory figure outside the heavenly armor planet coincided with this person's aura. Zhuowen took a deep breath. He knew that this person was probably Sakyamuni, and the other 2 he did not know should be the rulers of the other 2 heavenly regions. These 6 people, together with Great Brahma and Tai Ching, who did not appear, formed the 8 rulers of the heavenly regions. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He knew that the matter of the Door of Profundity must have been told to the other rulers by Palace Master Wujue. Sakyamuni, who was originally controlling the heavenly domain's origin, had a cold look in his eyes. His terrifying divine sense suddenly surged out, turning into a powerful storm that completely shattered Zhuowen's extended divine sense. Zhuowen groaned and hurriedly retracted his divine sense. His eyes were filled with fear. This Sakyamuni was so strong, even stronger than Palace Master Wujue. According to the strength that Sakyamuni had displayed, Zhuowen knew that Sakyamuni was not far from the Tao-confirming realm. I have to leave this place quickly. Once they break through the stone door, I will be in trouble. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with determination. He immediately looked at the black-clothed Zhuowen, who was sitting in the Calamity Crystal Stone Vein not far away. He knew that his clone was about to break through. At that time, the 19th Calamity Wind Calamity would descend. The Pillfire was lying on the black-clothed Zhuowen's shoulder, revealing an extremely human-like expression of desire and excitement. The Pillfire had clearly sensed the 19th Calamity Wind Calamity and could not wait to devour the calamity energy of the 19th Calamity Wind Calamity. At this moment, the space around the stone door trembled even more violently. It was as if the heavens and earth were falling apart. Zhuowen probed with his divine sense and found that the stone door in front of him had actually started to crack. Zhuowen frowned. Although the stone door was extremely sturdy, it was still difficult for it to withstand the combined attacks of 6 rulers of the heavenly regions. Furthermore, these 6 rulers of the heavenly regions all used the power of the heavenly domain's origin. The increase in power was extremely terrifying. Thinking of this, Zhuowen looked at the black-clothed Zhuowen nervously. He naturally hoped that his clone would break through as soon as possible. Outside the stone door, Sakyamuni activated the heavenly domain's origin. He immediately turned to Palace Master Wujue and snorted, "Palace Master Wujue, there's still a cultivator inside the stone door." The other 4, also turned their heads to look at Palace Master Wujua. They had also noticed Zhua Wen's consciousness just now, and they had the same doubts as Sakura when Palace Master Wujua notified them. He did not mention that there was a cultivator inside the stone door. Palace Master Wujua was calm and said, "There is indeed an ant inside. His cultivation is only at the 8th level of the void sky realm. I discovered this stone door because I was chasing this kid. Furthermore, this kid has a method that I don't know of to open this stone door. This stone door is so sturdy, I'm afraid there must be something good inside. That's why I notified everyone. As for this kid, he is wanted by my 6 Desire Palace. So when you enter, please do not interfere with my 6 Desire Palace's private affairs." When Palace Master Wujua said this, everyone else nodded. If Palace Master Wujua was right, they did not care about a mere 8th level of the void sky realm. Chapter 2486. Sakymuni's killing intent. What's his name? Sakyamuni asked again. He felt that the divine sense just now was a little familiar. Although Palace Master Wujua was surprised that Sakyamuni would ask such a question, he didn't dare to offend Sakyamuni. After all, Sakyamuni was recognized as the strongest in the 8 heavens. His name is Zhuowen, and he shouldn't be from the 6 Desires heavenly realm. Palace Master Wujua said. Sakyamuni narrowed his eyes, but his expression soon returned to normal. He smiled and said, "Everyone, let's work harder and break this stone door open quickly. If there's really something good inside, I think everyone knows the rules. I won't say much." The other 5 nodded. They didn't say anything about the rules mentioned by Sakyamuni. Over the years, the lords of the 8 heavens have had some conflicts. In order to explore the 9th heaven, they entered many treasure lands of the 8 heavens and naturally found a lot of good things. The original rule was that whoever gets it can keep it, and no one can snatch the things obtained by others. In the eyes of the other heavens, such a rule was indeed reasonable. For a time, the attacks of the 6 heavens lords became fiercer, and the stone door became more and more difficult to break. Finally, half an hour later, the surface of the stone door burst into a terrifying purple light, and a powerful purple aura spread out like a purple shockwave. The 6 heavens lords were caught off guard, and were forced to retreat by this terrifying purple shockwave. After a while, the purple shockwave gradually subsided, and then the purple fog world behind the broken stone door was revealed. Sakyamuni snorted coldly. Instead of retreating, he took a step forward and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, a terrifying gust of wind whistled out, and the thick purple fog in the world in front of him gradually dissipated. At the end of the purple fog, the 6 heavens lords found a transparent boundary. On the other side of the boundary was a different world. At the edge of this boundary, 2 figures were sitting cross-legged. These 2 figures had the same face, but their clothes were different, one in black and one in white. These 2 were naturally Zhuowen and his avatar. At this moment, the black-clothed Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. A terrifying black wind gathered around his body, and a powerful aura flowed out. The instant this black wind appeared, the pill fire lying on the black-clothed Zhuowen's shoulder whizzed out, transforming into a fire vortex that actually began to gradually devour the black wind surrounding the black-clothed Zhuowen's body. "Zhuowen, it's really you, Dai." Sakyamuni's eyes narrowed. His eyes narrowed. A cold sneer appeared on his face. His right hand turned into a claw, and a golden light burst out of his hand claw. He suddenly grasped at Zhuowen's body. Back then, Sakyamuni had already expected that Zhuowen had refined the infant devourer into his avatar. However, he didn't expect that Zhuowen's cultivation speed would be so fast. In less than 1,000 years, his cultivation had already reached the 8th void sky realm. With the enmity between Zhuowen and Sakyamuni, Sakyamuni had originally planned to kill him when they were on the heavenly armor star. However, Tai Ching had intervened. Later, because he had lost a bet with Tai Ching had ordered that he wasn't allowed to take the initiative to find trouble with Zhuowen. This was also why Sakyamuni had been holed up in the Sakyamuni domain for so many years and hadn't taken the initiative to find trouble with Zhuowen. One of the reasons was that he had an agreement with Tai Ching. Otherwise, if Zhuowen had left the Huaxia domain and entered the Great Brahma domain with Sakyamuni's means, he would have been able to easily find Zhuowen and eliminate Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He immediately summoned the everlasting ice lotus, and at the same time merged his 9 Tao intents into it. Bang! Sakyamuni's claw slammed down, and golden light surged. Zhuowen's right hand held the everlasting ice lotus as he suddenly retreated, involuntarily spitting out a mouthful of blood. Sakyamuni looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He hadn't expected that Zhuowen would be able to withstand his attack. One had to know that although he had only used 30% of his strength, it was enough to eliminate a life enlightenment realm expert. However, other than spitting out blood, Zhuowen didn't die because of it. You have some ability. You'd better die. Sakyamuni snorted coldly. His right hand formed into a claw, and he attacked again. This time, Sakyamuni didn't hold back at all. He directly grabbed at Zhuowen's vital parts. The terrifying aura was like the water pressure at the bottom of the sea, squeezing Zhuowen so hard that he couldn't move at all. Sakyamuni's cultivation was much stronger than Zhuowen's. Just the aura he released was enough to suppress Zhuowen to the point that he couldn't breathe. It was even difficult for him to move. Behind them, Palace Master Wujue saw this scene and frowned slightly. She was very dissatisfied with Sakyamuni attacking without permission. After all, she had already said that the cultivator behind the stone door was a criminal wanted by the Six Desires Palace. After entering the stone door, this person had to listen to their orders. However, Sakyamuni had directly attacked the cultivator behind the stone door. He didn't take her seriously at all. What made Palace Master Wujue helpless was that she didn't dare to say anything to Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni was much stronger than her. If she offended Sakyamuni because of Zhuowen, it wouldn't be wise at all. After Sakyamuni kills this kid, he must find a way to get his spirit ring. Palace Master Wujue muttered to herself. Palace Master Wujue muttered to herself. She knew that Desireless must have been hidden in Zhuowen's spirit ring. Bang! When Sakyamuni's attack was about to land on Zhuowen's head, a terrifying alchemy fire suddenly surged and immediately swept Zhuowen's body away. At the same time, it blasted Sakyamuni's attack. Bang! The alchemy fire was extremely fierce, but it only made Sakyamuni's body stop for a moment. This flame is unusual. It can actually dodge my attack. Sakyamuni looked at Zhuowen's body, which was wrapped in alchemy fire, and the black-clothed Zhuowen, who wasn't far away, in astonishment. Sakyamuni, wait until Zhuowen, reach the peak of cultivation. I'll definitely kill you. Within the alchemy fire, Zhuowen gritted his teeth and looked at Sakyamuni. Back then, all the creatures in the heavenly armor continent were treated as playthings by Sakyamuni. At that time, Zhuowen even called Sakyamuni's clone Yang Yi brother. All of this was completely destroyed after Yang Yi's betrayal. Now, Sakyamuni wanted to kill him as soon as he saw him. Zhuowen knew that if Zhuowen didn't take revenge, he wouldn't be human. Do you think you still have a future? Although your cultivation speed surprises me. You're going to die here today. There's no future. Sakyamuni sneered. Golden light surged out from his body, and golden circles appeared behind him. A terrifying aura surged out from these golden circles. The other 5 lords of heavenly regions were stunned. Even they could feel the terrifying energy contained in these golden circles. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, giant golden swords shot out from the countless golden circles. Each of these giant golden swords could shatter the starry sky and destroy the rules. Shuo, when looked at the densely packed golden swords, took a deep breath and landed beside the black-robed Zhuo. Chapter 2487. Insidious. The place where Zhuo stood was now in ruins. Sakyamuni stood in place, frowning. This kid is really cunning. He even has a teleportation technique. He teleported away at the last moment. Sakyamuni said with an unfriendly expression. Palace Master Wujue's expression changed drastically. The reason why she broke open the stone door at all costs was mainly because of Zhuo. Now that Zhuo had escaped right under her nose, she was extremely angry, but she did not dare to vent her anger on Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni thought for a while, then turned to the 5 people behind him and said, "Everyone, let's search this space and see if there's anything good." With that, Sakyamuni took the lead and swept to the other places. His powerful consciousness searched the space mercilessly. The other 5 naturally did not want to be outdone. The reason why they worked together with the other lords of the heavens to break open the stone door was naturally because of the treasures inside. Otherwise, why would they risk their lives to help Palace Master Wujue? Wouldn't that be a thankless task? However, the 6 lords of the heavens searched the space a few times. When they gathered at the edge of the barrier again, their expressions did not look good. This was because they did not find anything in the space. Could it be that the kid took everything inside? Palace Master Wujue's beautiful eyes flashed as she said in a low voice, "It's possible. After all, this kid stayed here for 10 years. If there really were treasures, I'm afraid he took them all away." Tusita Sage's expression did not look good either. Sakyamuni did not say anything. Instead, he went to where Zhuo was just now. Spirit gathering array. Sakyamuni looked at the traces of the array at the edge of the barrier. This array was destroyed not long ago. Then, Sakyamuni's gaze fell on the barrier. He saw a different world on the other side of the barrier. This world was bigger and more magnificent than the 8 heavens. What rich starry sky energy! It's much richer than the 8 heavens. The other 5 lords of heavens also came to the edge of the barrier. Out of curiosity, Yemaozi reached out his hand to touch the barrier. Surprisingly, there was no resistance at all when he reached into the world on the other side of the barrier. He was pleasantly surprised to find that the energy on the other side of the barrier was extremely dense. Sakyamuni and the others also stretched their hands out of the barrier and found that the world on the other side of the barrier was different. Is the other side of this barrier the 9th heaven? Old Lord Tusita Sage guessed. Everyone's eyes lit up. They felt that Old Lord Tusita's guess was very likely correct. If it's really the 9th heaven, then it's really a piece of cake for us. I always thought that if I wanted to go to the 9th heaven, I would have to reach the Tao-confirming realm to cross the chasm between the 8 heavens and the 9th heaven. Now, it seems that there is no need at all. We just need to pass through this barrier. Tusita Sage said excitedly. The 6 people present were the true experts who stood at the peak of the 8 heavens. Naturally, they knew a lot of secrets. They know that there is an extremely mysterious 9th heaven above the 8 heavens. The 9th heaven is mysterious and powerful. It's said that it's not in the starry sky where the 8 heavens are located, but in an extremely distant place outside the starry sky. At the end of the starry sky, there is a natural barrier that blocks the connection between the 8 heavens and the 9th heaven. It's said that to pass through this natural barrier, one must at least succeed in reaching the Tao-confirming realm. Otherwise, one will die in the natural barrier. Most of the powerhouses of the eight heavens who reached the Tao-confirming realm have left this place and went to the natural barrier in the starry sky. Of course, there are also extremely bold existences who went to the natural barrier when they were in the life and death boundary, but all of them died on the spot without exception. Although the lords of the eight heavens know the existence of the ninth heaven, and they are eager to enter the ninth heaven and step into a higher realm, they know that the natural barrier is not something that can be entered by cultivators in the life and death boundary. Once you enter the natural barrier, you will die without a doubt, unless you're a Tao-confirming realm powerhouse. The other side of this barrier must be the ninth heaven. I'll go in and take a look. Boundless Photon excitedly took a step forward and rushed into the barrier. I'll also go in and take a look. Yemazi, who was wearing an animal skin, was also an impatient person. When infinite light entered the barrier, he also went inside. Sakyamuni, Palace Master Wujue, Old Lord Tusada, and Xiaoyaozi were also a little tempted, but they were more cautious and didn't enter rashly. The four of them waited for a long time, but Yemazi and Infinite Light didn't come out of the barrier. After Yemazi and Infinite Light entered, they didn't give us any signal until now. Did something happen to them? Old Lord Tusada said solemnly. Sakyamuni's eyes were cold. With a wave of his sleeve, a golden light flashed and turned into a human figure. This is my avatar, connected to my divine sense. Let him enter, and we will know whether it is safe or not. Sakyamuni said, then waved his hand, and the golden figure entered the barrier. After waiting for a while, Sakyamuni's face became solemn. Sakyamuni, what's going on? Isn't the ninth heaven on the other side of the barrier? Xiaoyaozi asked anxiously. Sakyamuni shook his head, and his eyes became even more solemn. The other side of the barrier is indeed the ninth heaven. The starry sky energy inside is definitely something I have never seen before. Even the heavenly laws are extremely complete. It's just that, after hearing Sakyamuni say that the other side of the barrier is indeed the ninth heaven, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but Palace Master Wujue immediately asked, then why do you have such an expression, Brother D? Sakyamuni was silent for a moment, then sighed softly. What you see on the other side of the barrier is an illusion. Once you enter the barrier, you will find yourself in a dangerous place. There are many dangers inside. My avatar was destroyed as soon as he entered. What? It's a dangerous place. How is it compared to the heavenly mode in the starry sky? Xiaoyaozi asked quickly. Sakyamuni thought for a moment and said seriously, it's completely different from the heavenly moat. The danger is naturally much lower, but it still shouldn't be underestimated. It should be more suitable for cultivators in the life and death boundary to enter, but there is also a certain risk. If you want to enter, you have to think carefully. The other three looked at each other. Among them, Palace Master Wujue's beautiful eyes flickered as she said, I still have some things to deal with, so I won't go in. I'll take my leave first. I have nothing to worry about. It's easier to reach the Tao-confirming realm in the ninth heaven, so why not go in? Xiaoyaozi was quite free and easy. He didn't hesitate to enter the barrier. Old Lord Tusada looked at Sakyamuni seriously and said, Brother D, is what you said just now true? Sakyamuni nodded and said, Of course it's true. Old Lord Tusada thought for a while and nodded. I'll go in too. Just as Old Lord Tusada was about to enter, Sakyamuni suddenly attacked. Sakyamuni's right hand turned into a blade. Golden light flashed, and Old Lord Tusada's right hand was chopped off. After that, Sakyamuni slammed it into the barrier. Sakyamuni, the moment Old Lord Tusada was pushed into the barrier, he looked at Sakyamuni in disbelief. Then, Sakyamuni's joking voice sounded in his ears. Chapter 2488. Tao confirming divine pill. When old Lord Tusida's figure completely disappeared from the barrier, Sakyamuni took off the spirit ring on old Lord Tusida's finger with an expressionless face. After erasing the imprint on the spirit ring, Sakyamuni rummaged through the spirit ring and took out a divine pill with Tao rhythm flowing around it. The Tao rhythm of this divine pill is much richer than the Tao fruit. It's definitely not an ordinary divine pill. The corners of Sakyamuni's mouth were full of smiles. He knows that this divine pill with Tao rhythm flowing around it is the Tao confirming divine pill, and it's also the only one in the 8 heavens. This Tao confirming divine pill was passed down by the previous Heavenly Lord Tusida. The previous Heavenly Lord spent a lot of effort to refine it, and he finally succeeded in refining this Tao confirming divine pill. With this Tao confirming divine pill, I should be able to successfully reach the Tao confirming realm. When I finally become a Tao confirming realm powerhouse, that old man Tai Ching won't be able to restrain me, and the original bet won't be able to do anything to me. After I destroy Zhuoan, I will absorb all the heavenly sources of the 8 heavens and then head to the 9th heaven. Sakyamuni laughed, then looked at the barrier in front of him. His eyes flickered, and he said coldly, "The other side of this barrier should also be the 9th heaven, but it's an extremely dangerous place, even more terrifying than the natural moat. It's ridiculous that Xiao Yaozi and the others don't have any tricks up their sleeves." After saying that, Sakyamuni looked at the transparent barrier in front of him with a sneer and immediately left this place. The clone condensed by Sakyamuni just now was connected to his mind, although it was destroyed by an unknown force the moment it entered the other side of the barrier. However, the moment Sakyamuni's clone was destroyed, he still saw the remains of Yemazi and Wu Lianghua. Obviously, these two were instantly destroyed as soon as they entered this place. Originally, Sakyamuni planned to remind the other heavenly lords, but he immediately gave up the idea. The 8 sky lords were originally in a relationship of mutual restraint. If one of the sky lords launched an attack on another sky, it would immediately cause the other sky lords to join forces and attack. Sakyamuni's ambition has always been great, and he is the strongest heavenly lord of the 8 heavens, but because of the restraint of the 8 heavenly lords, he hasn't dared to act recklessly for countless years. Furthermore, Sakura was extremely afraid of Huaxia Sky Domain's Tai Ching because Tai Ching of Huaxia Sky Domain was the most mysterious sky domain, lord among the 8 sky domains. Sakyamuni is very clear that his chances of success is the heavenly lord will be very low. And if Sakyamuni really attacks, and the heavenly lords of the other heavens will join the heavenly lord, together with the other heavenly lords of the other heavens, Sakyamuni's king, heaven's king, lord, heaven lord. Heavens is heavenly heavens, is S. And if he can use this danger zone to get rid of 4 or 5 heavenly lords, Sakyamuni isn't afraid of facing heavenly lord alone. He's mainly afraid of the other heavenly lords joining forces. Although Sakyamuni is strong, he's not strong enough to fight against the 7 heavenly lords. Moreover, the reason he used such a vicious scheme was also because of the Tao confirming divine pill on old Lord Tusida. Tusida Sage's strength is one of the strongest heavenly lords. Even Sakyamuni would have to put in a lot of effort to deal with Tusida Sage. That's why Sakyamuni used such a vicious scheme, and he did succeed. Of the 5 heavenly lords who came with him, except for Palace Master Wujue, who left early, the other 4 heavenly lords all entered the danger zone on the other side of the barrier. But what Sakyamuni didn't expect was that after he left the barrier, a strange black withered arm slowly reached out from within the barrier after Palace Master Wujue returned to 6 Desires Palace. Her beautiful eyes were focused and flickering. The reason why she left early was mainly because her 6th sense was much sharper than ordinary cultivators. At that time, she felt that the other side of the barrier was extremely dangerous. It's not that she hasn't been to the outer realm heavenly moat before, but she felt that the world on the other side of the barrier was much more terrifying than the heavenly moat. As for Sakyamuni's words, she didn't believe them at all. Sakyamuni was ambitious. Palace Master Wujue always knew that, so she believed him. In her eyes, it was asking a tiger for its skin. At that time, Palace Master Wujue didn't dare to tell the other heavenly lords. After all, it was only her guess, and if she said it, it would make Sakyamuni suspect that she sensed something. Perhaps then Sakyamuni would make things difficult for her. With Palace Master Wujue's personality, she naturally wouldn't stand out. If she could protect herself, she wouldn't do anything unnecessary. Palace Master Wujue, you left quite quickly. An indifferent voice suddenly came from behind Palace Master Wujue, and it sounded quietly. Palace Master Wujue was taken aback. She immediately turned around and looked at the stalwart man behind her with a look of surprise. Sakyamuni, didn't you go to the 9th heaven? Palace Master Wujue frowned. Sakyamuni picked a seat at random and sat down. He smiled faintly and said, "They went in first. I still have some other things to do, so I'll go in later." But why didn't Palace Master Wujue go in? After all, this barrier was found in your 6 desires heavenly realm. Aren't you interested in the 9th heaven on the other side of the barrier? Palace Master Wujue smiled dryly and said, "There are still many things to deal with in the 6 desires palace, so I don't plan to go to the 9th heaven so early." Sakyamuni nodded and suddenly said, "By the way, Palace Master Wujue, you said that your 6 desires palace is looking for Zhuowen. What is the reason?" Palace Master Wujue smiled and said, "It's nothing, just a trivial matter." Sakyamuni sneered and said, "Palace Master Wujue, can a trivial matter make you blast open the stone gate at all costs?" Palace Master Wujue frowned. She felt that Sakyamuni didn't come with good intentions and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Sakyamuni smiled sinisterly, and the golden vertical bar between his eyebrows suddenly opened, followed by a blazing golden light bursting out. Palace Master Wujue immediately stretched out her hand and took out the ancient zither transformed from spring snow. Her jade-like hands plucked the zither strings, and invisible ripples spread out densely. Bang! 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 Suddenly, terrifying shockwaves exploded, and the huge palace of desire turned into ruins. "Sakyamuni, what do you mean by this?" Palace Master Wujue's angry voice sounded from the ruins, but unfortunately, what responded to her was an even stronger attack. For a moment, the sky above the Palace of Desire was filled with the aftermath of the terrifying divine power of life and death. The disciples of the 6 Desires Palace who were nearby were all turned into nothingness by the aftermath of the terrifying divine power of life and death. Chapter 2489. Snatching the celestial origin at this moment, Sakyamuni's entire body was wrapped in golden light. The golden vertical bar between his eyebrows was even brighter than the sun. It was as if the space between his eyebrows contained the energy of countless stars. Palace Master Wujue, on the other hand, was holding an ancient zither made of milky white energy. Her face was gloomy as she plucked the zither strings. Relying on the surging energy from the zither strings, she resisted Sakyamuni's violent energy. Yun Maozha and Yao Xiangjuan had already been teleported out by Palace Master Wujue. Now, they were protected by the other 4 Palace Masters. These 2 were the most talented disciples of 6 Desire Palace. Naturally, they had to protect them well and not let any accidents happen to them. "Martial Uncle, what's going on?" Yao Xiangjuan asked in confusion. Palace Master Jingyun's face turned ugly. She said, "I don't know what's wrong with Sakyamuni. He actually entered Desire Palace and suddenly attacked Palace Master Wujua. Sakyamuni? Yunmaozha was shocked. He had naturally heard of Sakyamuni's reputation. He was recognized as the strongest person in the 8 celestial domains. He was also a peerless expert who was the closest to attaining the Tao. What should we do? Martial uncle, Yao Xiangjuan said worriedly. Palace Master Hua Ting gritted her teeth and said, "We can only act according to the situation. This Sakyamuni is too terrifying. The difference between the 4 of us and Sakyamuni is too big. I'm afraid we can't even take 1 hit from him. Quickly, set up the palace protection array." Palace Master Jingyun said quickly. The other palace masters nodded and immediately went to set up the palace protection array. When the palace protection array was finally set up, the battle between Palace Master Wujua and Sakyamuni had reached its climax. The power of each of their attacks could be described as earth-shattering. Seeing this scene, the disciples of 6 Desire Palace were shocked. They did not expect a battle between 2 extreme experts of the life and death realm to be so terrifying. Sakyamuni, what do you want? If you have any requests, just say it. Why do you have to attack without saying anything? Palace Master Wujua was completely at a disadvantage. Her face was pale as she shouted at Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni took a step forward. His right Palace Master Wujua Yao Wujua Yu Wujua 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 Wujua's Wujua 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 was Wujua's Wujua 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 Yui Wujua was you. Bang! The golden light and the white light blended together and finally exploded. Then Palace Master Wujua spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated several thousand miles before kneeling on the ground. Sakyamuni stopped in front of Palace Master Wujua. His whole body was surrounded by golden light, and his hands were behind his back. He looked at Palace Master Wujua indifferently and said coldly, "The origin of the 6 desires' heavenly domain is the white snow in spring. Your Guqin, which is the manifestation of the origin, is too weak." Sakyamuni, what exactly do you want? Palace Master Wujua said angrily. She was attacked by Sakyamuni for no reason. Although Palace Master Wujua was afraid of Sakyamuni, it didn't mean that she wouldn't give in to Sakyamuni and get angry. Sakyamuni sneered and said, "I want your life and the source of your 6 desires' heavenly realm. Hand over the true source of spring snow." The true origin of the 8 heavenly domains was the core of the heavenly domain. The masters of the heavenly domains wouldn't casually carry it with them. If they didn't completely refine and absorb it, it would be difficult to hide the strong aura on it. Whether it was Palace Master Wujua, Sakyamuni, or Sakyamuni Tusita Sage, and the others who were pushed into the boundary by Sakyamuni, the so-called source of the heavenly domain was only a projection of energy comprehended from the true source of the heavenly domain. They couldn't casually carry the true source of the heavenly domain with them. Therefore, after Sakyamuni tricked Tusita Sage and the others into the dangerous place behind the boundary, he planned to go to the various heavenly domains to search for the source of the heavenly domain. He knew very well that Tao validation not only required sufficient comprehension, but also sufficient energy. In the 8 heavenly domains where the energy was scarce, it was very difficult to reach Tao validation because of the lack of energy and incomplete laws. However, the laws and energy in the source of the heavenly domain were extremely rich and complete. Sakyamuni cultivated to his current realm because he thoroughly comprehended the source of the Sakyamuni domain and absorbed almost all of the source energy of the Sakyamuni domain. Sakyamuni could feel that he only needed to absorb a part of the source energy of the heavenly domain. coupled with the Tao Validation Divine Pill in his hand, he had an 80% chance of successfully reaching Tao validation. As for the extra source energy of the heavenly domain, Sakyamuni would naturally wait until he reached Tao validation to consolidate his Tao validation realm. After consolidating his Tao validation realm, he would deal with Xuan and then leave the 8 heavenly domains for the 9th heaven. Palace Master Wujue's pupils shrank to the size of needles. With a fierce roar, he stared at Sakyamuni and said, "Why? You attacked me and stole the source energy of the 6 desires heavenly domain. If the other heavenly domain lords learn of this, they will immediately join forces to besiege you." Sakyamuni smiled slightly but didn't speak. Instead, he took a step forward and formed a claw with his hand. Golden light flashed like lightning as he rushed towards the sky. Boom! Boom! Palace Master Wujue gritted her teeth, and once again summoned the ancient zither transformed from spring white snow, wanting to fight to the death. She knew that with Sakyamuni's strength that suffocated her, it was only a matter of time before she was defeated and killed. However, she couldn't let this guy get the source energy of the 6 desires heavenly domain, so she had to delay Sakyamuni for now. Inside the palace-protecting Grand Array, Palace Master Jingyun's face turned ugly. She said in a deep voice, "Palace Master Wujue told us to escape quickly." She also said that the source energy of the heavenly domain is in Xiangjuan's body. We must take Xiangjuan and leave the 6 desires heavenly domain smoothly. The other 3 palace masters were shocked. Hua Ting's beautiful eyes narrowed as she said, "Palace Master Wujue wouldn't say such things until the last moment." The rest of them fell silent. They could all hear the implied meaning in Hua Ting's words. It was obvious that Palace Master Wujue was at the end of her rope. "Xiangjuan, if what Palace Master Wujue said is true, you are the hope of the 6 Desires Palace. We must take you away as soon as possible," Palace Master Jing Yun said solemnly. "But, Master, Yao Xiangjuan said with some pain. "Xiangjuan, Sakyamuni is too terrifying. Do you want to die for nothing? Although I don't know what method Palace Master Wujue used to place the source energy of the 6 desires heavenly domain in your body, as long as you have this source energy, your cultivation speed will become extremely terrifying. You will reach the 2 extremes of life and death. Your strength will not be weaker than Sakyamuni's now. But if you die now, who will avenge Palace Master Wujue in the future? So you must calm down now," Palace Master Jingyun advised seriously. Yao Xiangjuan calmed down. Palace Master Jingyun was right. Her strength was too weak now. If she went up now, not only would she not be able to help Palace Master Wujue, but she would also lose her life. "Martial Ant, I understand. If I succeed in my cultivation, I will definitely kill Sakyamuni." Yao Xiangjuan's eyes were filled with killing intent. Chapter 2490. The Fall of Wujue. "Xiangjuan, come with us. There is an extremely secretive ancient teleportation array in the palace. That teleportation array can send you directly to the border of the 6 Desires Heavenly Region. As long as we leave the 6 Desires Heavenly Region, the naughty Shiva shouldn't be able to find us. Palace Master Wujue also wants us to go to the Huaxia Heavenly Region," Palace Master Jing Yun said in a deep voice. "Why?" Yao Xiangjuan was a little surprised. Palace Master Wujue and Sakyamuni were together with 4 other heavenly region lords. But now, only Sakyamuni came to the 6 Desires Palace. There is no news about the other 4 heavenly region lords. I'm afraid. Palace Master Jing Yun shook her head. Yao Xiangjuan's face became serious. She had already guessed what Palace Master Jing Yun said. The other 4 heavenly region lords might have met with misfortune because of Sakyamuni. "Leave quickly." Suddenly, Palace Master Wujue let out a shrill scream. Then, the battlefield in the distance was suddenly covered by endless golden light. Then, the entire Six Desires heavenly region was dyed golden by the golden light. Let's go. Palace Master Jingyun didn't waste any more time. She grabbed Yao Xiangjuan's hand and rushed towards the secretive ancient teleportation array. The ancient transmission array was located in the depths of the Desire Palace. When Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan arrived here, the other 3 Palace Masters also followed behind with their respective disciples. Palace Master Jingyun came to the ancient teleportation array and quickly formed hand seals. Then, the ancient teleportation array burst out with dense and complicated runes. Xiangjuan, go in quickly. The moment the ancient teleportation array burst out with light, Palace Master Jingyun pulled Yao Xiangjuan and stepped into the ancient teleportation array. Then, the moment the other 3 Palace Masters were about to step into the ancient teleportation array, the entire Desire Palace began to tremble violently. Then, the Desire Palace collapsed as a huge golden palm crushed down. You want to leave? You think it's that easy? Sakyamuna's majestic voice came. The 3 Palace Masters and the elite disciples standing outside the ancient teleportation array, including Yun Maozhe, were all crushed into dust by the golden palm. Then, there was a terrifying ripple around the ancient teleportation array. It actually blocked the terrifying golden palm temporarily. You even set up a chain defense array on the teleportation array. But to me, it's nothing. Sakyamuna's go. Sakyamuna's voice came again. Then, the golden palm's palace, the golden palm became thicker. Run! Palace Master Jingyun and Palace Master Wujue and Wujue, Palace Master Wujue, Wujue, Palace Master Wujue, Wujue and Wujue Studio, the Wujue. After Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan disappeared from the teleportation array, a golden figure slowly landed in the ruins of the Desire Palace. He looked coldly at the dim teleportation array and said coldly, "Your luck is really good." Bang! Palace to palace to palace to palace to palace was palace. See Chach. Palace Master Wujue spat out a mouthful of blood. She looked at Sakyamuni with hatred and said coldly, "I have already notified the other heavenly lords. You will be besieged by the other heavenly lords." Sakyamuni laughed and said, "Wujue, didn't you leave the stone gate space in advance because you felt that something was wrong? Otherwise, why would you leave there? Do you think I will be so reckless when I brazenly invade your Six Desires Palace?" Palace Master Wujue's pupils shrank. Her delicate body trembled. She said in disbelief, "Tusita Sage and the others?" "It's not what you think. I can't kill the 4 of them alone. The 4 of them have all entered the other side of the barrier." Speaking till here, Sakra's gaze revealed a proud look as he continued, "Back then when I created my clone, do you know what I saw?" Palace Master Wujue was silent. She knew that Sakyamuna's next words will definitely not be good news. "I saw the corpses of Yema Zi and Immeasurable Photon, who were in a hurry to enter the barrier. They died the moment they entered the barrier. Of course, my clone was only able to see their corpses before it was destroyed. Then I lied to Old Lord Tusita and Xiao Yaozi. I said that although it is dangerous inside, it is indeed the 9th heaven, and the danger is much weaker than the heavenly moat. Then Old Lord Tusita and Xiao Yaozi entered the barrier." Sakyamuna's mouth was full of pride. He was also a little surprised that he could eliminate the 4 heavenly lords so effortlessly. In addition to Palace Master Wujue in front of him, only Great Brahma and Tai Ching are left in the 8 heavens. Sakyamuni never put Great Brahma in his eyes. If he wants to destroy great Brahma, he can do so with a flick of his finger. After listening to Sakyamuni's narration, Palace Master Wujue felt extremely regretful. She regretted not reminding Old Lord Tusada and Xiao Yaozi of the dangers on the other side of the barrier. Unfortunately, because of Palace Master Wujue's selfishness, Old Lord Tusada and Xiao Yaozi died, and because of that, she also lost her life. Wujue, I told you so much not to show off, but to let you know that you still have a way out. Now, I have changed my mind. I don't need your life. I only need the origin of your 6 desires' heavenly realm. When the time comes, I can make you my dog. Sakyamuni said, lightly. Palace Master Wujue laughed, and her laughter was full of mockery. Sakyamuni felt unhappy in his heart and slapped Palace Master Wujue to the ground. Sakyamuni, you'd better kill me. You will never get the origin of the 6 desires' heavenly realm. Palace Master Wujue mocked. Sakyamuni snorted coldly and lifted Palace Master Wujue up. Then his powerful consciousness began to search inch by inch in the 6 desires star field. After a while, Sakyamuni's expression became extremely ugly because he did not find any aura of the heavenly realm's origin in the 6 desires star field. Sakyamuni had already absorbed all the origin energy of the Sakyamuni domain and was extremely sensitive to the energy of the origin. However, he did not feel any of it here. No, you put the heavenly realm's origin in that little girl. Sakyamuni suddenly looked at Palace Master Wujue in anger. Previously, when he killed the other palace masters of the Desire Palace, he sensed the aura of Yao Xiangjuan, who was teleported away. At that time, he felt that the aura of this girl was familiar. He did not pay attention to it before, but now that he thought about it, wasn't that the aura of the heavenly realm's origin? Palace Master Wujue only sneered and did not speak. If that's the case, then you will die. The 6 desires heavenly realm's origin is not only in the 6 desires heavenly realm. Other heavenly realms also have it. I can still find another one, and you will die. Sakyamuni did not waste any more words. His right hand grabbed Palace Master Wujue's head, and golden light exploded. Palace Master Wujue's entire body was annihilated in the blazing golden light. After doing this, Sakyamuni left the 6 desires starfield. Looking at the 6 desires starfield from afar, Sakyamuni waved his sleeve and countless golden rain shot out. The 6 desires starfield was completely turned into nothingness in this wave of golden rain. There will be no more 6 desires palace in the future.